The comic book industry is in trouble, is what some people want you to believe. That is not necessarily what we think around here. What we think is that there are problems and there are solutions. And we have talked a lot about the problems over the last few weeks. We've talked about Diamond, we've talked about, the direct market confusion. We've talked about a lot of stuff. But today, we are going to be talking about the solutions that can lead to the comics industry thriving in 2025, 6, and beyond. And to help us have that conversation, we brought on industry insider, one of the good guys, one of the ones who is fighting the fight, an Eisner Award winner, someone who has ran comic book shops, someone who has worked with publishers, Bad Idea, Valiant, now runs Prana Direct Market Solutions. We have Adam Freeman. Adam, thank you so much for joining us
Oh
today.
my God. Wow. What an intro. My goodness. One of the good guys. You know what? I'm going to actually just poke back just a little bit, Sean. Uh, I think the comic industry actually is thriving very quietly. I will say that the thing about the comic book industry specific, I don't want to dive right in if you guys already have stuff ready to go, but um, the thing about especially the direct market, right? The comic book shops that sell comics that keep this whole thing running. The weird thing about them is that they have not really seen explosive growth. True, but they've also not they've not drawn there's been no contraction of those stores. The store count has not really shifted, and I'm in the process of doing an annual survey that we do. I can't speak to this year, but I will say that we have not seen a constriction or a growth in comic shops, the store count plus or minus 4% in something like 20 years. Now, why is that remarkable? Look at brick and mortar bookstores, right? They had a massive contraction back in the 90s and 2000s, back when people started reading, digital books, right? We saw music stores, record stores just died off. They're beginning to come back, but like comic shops have never really shifted. And I will say our company, I know that we wanted to get into this a little bit, but our company tracks something that we call the fan confidence rating. We use a relationship that we have with a couple of different comic shop POS systems to see how fans are reacting to content. And right this second, we have something called the fan confidence rating that's based on subscriptions and pre-orders and then divided by the number of stores contributing. Right now, it's a little over 230, something like that. And what we've seen is we are at the highest peak. Well, last month we had a small dip, which always happens this time of year, but last month we were at the highest peak we've been in for 2 years. So fans are coming into stores, and I'm getting reports of this from the comic shops themselves. Fans are coming into the stores and more excited for single issue comics than they have been in a long time. So don't listen to the hype, as it were, right? The hype that it's all dying. It's not dying. It's growing. It's just growing so quietly. And we're not used to that. We're used to success stories being, 10x valuations. The truth of the matter is 10x valuations often lead to contractions that put a whole bunch of people out of work and out of business. I don't want, as somebody who like supports the direct market, I don't want that. I want to see us continually incrementally grow year after year.
I mean, why look at stats though when I could just watch a guy on YouTube tell me, doomsay and tell me all the boogeymen that I should worry about. But yeah, no, that's great
Exactly.
news.
Yeah. Yeah,
Every
dude.
yeah,
Go ahead. No, please go ahead, John.
I was going to say everything that Adam just said is the reason why we wanted to have you on the show today. Because I think, we talk about tariffs, right? We talk about all these things, direct market, we talk about diamond, all these things that are going wrong, right? And there are pain points,
Sure.
but that doesn't necessarily reflect what's happening on the ground level in stores with sales, because you're talking about an industry that's quote unquote dying, but then you're talking about 400K pre-orders for Battle Beast, and you're talking about 400 plus K for Batman 158, which is out next week. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is that we don't have good data. This
Right.
is something that my company is working on actively. We're trying to put together something that will replace the sales data that we used to have, starting off with these comics, these POS stores. And it's a lot of work, and it's something that we're not yet paid for, so it's something we kind of do on the side. But the reason that we have room for that doom and gloom is there's a vacuum of information, right? And people are going to fill that with what will get them attention. What gets attention on the internet? What gets attention? What if it? I mean, it's been since the newspaper. If it bleeds, it leads, right?
Yeah.
Of course, that's what they're going to fill the gap with. Is it's all dying. And it's just not as sexy to say it's actually not dying. It's incrementally getting better every month. This is so hard to get people interested in that.
Yeah,
So
the language of, small gains one is not, is not exciting for individuals, but I think
yeah,
for us being like so ingrained into it, and even for some of the audience who like truly cares about the direction and the health of the market, I think yeah, it's super important to be able to get that information. And just from having anecdotal conversations with shops, these disparate POS systems, you have your book scan, which can do whatever, aggregate as much information as possible. But
right.
if you're not able to have a single unified system, then you're extrapolating so far, and you can extrapolate from 200 stores, sure, but there's what, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 actually in the market, that makes it difficult
Yeah.
to be accurate at a certain point.
Well, and that is in and of itself a really difficult problem, right? So Circana Bookscan wasn't really taken. Circana being the company that now owns them, they were called the MPD Group, and before that, they were the Bookscan. Bookscan itself was not really adopted as a standard until it reached 85% of the market, right? Now, we are never going to get there. Now, the reason why is because, well, not we're never going to get there. It's entirely possible we could get there. We could conceivably achieve 85% of the sales, right? 85% of the market, that 2 to 4,000. My company, we track about 4,800 worldwide, right? That's what we're looking at as far as like the globe, comic shops of the globe. And then you get into what is a comic shop, right? I mean,
Sure.
we all have a visualization of what that is, but the truth of the matter is that you could list yourself as selling comics on Google and never have comics in the store, right? You could have an account with Lunar and Diamond and never, I mean, just essentially order your own stuff if you really wanted to. So what is a comic shop? That's real difficult to define. So that said, are we ever going to get to 85% of that 4,800? Probably not. But I think we can get really close to 85% of the actual volume. So the old 80-20 rule applies for comic shops. Anybody who has seen account sales data for a publisher can tell you that somewhere between 15 and 20% of the stores that order your product order 80% of the volume, right? And it just makes sense, right? So for most publishers, you really only have to track 4 to 500 of them
Sure.
in total, right? Some of them, it's even just 2 to 300 you have to keep track of and build relationships with and feed promotional materials to. You need those kinds of things in order to grow. Do you need that relationship in order to grow? But you can't have a relationship for 4,800, and you don't even need to, because most of them, if they order it, I used to have this rule when we were talking about sales data that we had the median of 1. No matter how big we got at Valiant, whenever I would look at account sales data at a list of each account, what they're ordering, if I went to the very middle of that list, the median, the unit was always 1. Everybody down and below that had ordered 1 copy of whatever it was, right? And I'm sure that that's probably not the case for, let's say, Marvel and DC. My guess is it's probably the case for most Image, right? That median of 1 means nobody down below, half of that list is not useless, but like I'm only going to get through to that list by getting through to the consumer. If I'm reaching out to the consumer first, that's going to drive demand. That's going to bring those people up. So yeah. I don't think we need to get there, but I think we can get there. And I think that the data we are seeing is positive right now. And that's just overwhelmingly so. It's just really difficult to convince people to take 230 stores, as good as they are, seriously. So yeah.
That's fascinating. And we're going to dive more into that in just a second. Absolute Overthinker with the $10 super chat. Thank you so much. That's a reminder to everybody that super chats are open. If you do want to share a message with us or with Adam, we would appreciate that. Absolute Overthinker says one way we can fix the industry is by supporting folks that are positive and actually love comics and creators. Smash that like button and get the word out. Joining this community last year was clutch. Thank you so much, Overthinker. We really appreciate you, dude.
Hey, Overthinker. Also, after you're done watching this and you've watched everything on their list, I mean everything, go deep. You should also go and subscribe to Comic Industry Insiders podcast that I do weekly with a YouTube channel where we talk to people behind the scenes of the comic book industry and get to know the tips and tricks that make their career work and that you can bring to your own business or career in comics. So.
We have people
There you
already
go.
talking about your channel and the Dan Didio interview you had. So
Oh,
we have some
yeah.
watchers already in here.
That was Dan's Dan is such a character, man. That was such a fun interview. He's been talk about a powerhouse. Like he really shaped the comics industry while he was in that position at DC. Yeah, I loved that interview. Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
one of my gets. Like I really, really want to talk to Dan Didio.
I think you'll get there if you want to. Let me know. Maybe we can help you make that happen. He's a sweetheart.
We'll have to talk about that. And I want to say, if you enjoyed, because we did a few weeks ago, we talked about your 5 points of how to fix comics that you did at Comics Pro.
Yeah.
And
It's a
that
bit
was
of a
a
misnomer. I didn't correct Rich. I didn't actually do that presentation at Comics Pro. I put that out of my newsletter the week after Comics Pro, but oftentimes let Rich get his clickbait title. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Fair
Anyway,
enough.
go
But
ahead.
in any event, it was something that our audience really connected to and we were really excited about. And that was the impetus for bringing you on here, even though personally, I've been following you for years. So what I
Thank
really
you.
want to absolutely what I really want to talk about is what are the again, we don't have this conversation doesn't have to be negative, but I definitely want to hear what are the pain points or the problems that you see. And then I want to tackle this list of solutions and expand on it and
Sure.
sort of build the conversation around that framework.
Well, so hold on a second. I'm gonna have a little coffee here. Go. So it's crazy to me that you guys do this at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Are you all East Coast?
We're all in
Yeah.
everybody on this
Yeah.
podcast is in New York right now.
Oh, we're all in New York?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm in Manhattan. Marco's in Queens.
Yep.
I'm in Yonkers, so
Yep.
we're hitting
Holy
all
shit.
and the extra borough Yonkers is here.
I mean, well, we got Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, and Staten. Like, we got we're making
Pretty
this
much.
happen today. Okay. Yeah. So to talk about what are the pain points of comics, you have to kind of define comics, and that's the weird part about this. When we say that the YouTubers that you're talking about, or the people who are really loud talking about the death of comics, I believe they're being accurate. Actually, I don't believe that they're lying. I don't believe that they're telling us something that's not true. I think what they're saying is that their position in looking at comics says that it's dying, right? Because they have a very specific view. Right this second, we're seeing content win over collectability. That's something that's has happened several times. It's in the shift. I always love to say nature abhors a straight line. There's always waves, right? So in those waves, we've got collectability and content, and what is driving consumer demand. For a long time, especially just right post COVID, we had this massive collectibles boom, right? And we had these brands come up that really just focused on collectibles. Key Collectors, a perfect example of an app that is really good database. Nick, the guy who runs it, does an incredible amount of work keeping that database accurate. But it became so popular because people were looking for what to buy and sell, right? They weren't looking for what to read. They weren't deep diving into Swamp Thing to see what was which one is their next one, right? So we saw this become sort of the definition of comics, right? This was the narrative of comics for a while. And it was the same when I got started. I mean, I got started in comics retail in 93 and started working in a comic shop. And exactly the same time, it was about what can I buy this for this week and then sell it for next week, right? And then that died. And you want to talk about like a death. Like we went from something like 8,000 stores down to like 2 or 3,000 stores. It was a cut, right? And so when I talk about how this is not death, I've already been through death, and this ain't it. That it's because we went through that in the 90s. So we see this narrative. This narrative has been, repeating over and over again. But in the same way that in the 90s we saw this incredible move towards we saw Image remake itself. We saw some independent books come out that like redefined how comics worked. We changed the game because it was an opportunity for storytellers to get some attention and not just something to create something that was hot, right? So I think we're going through that period right now, and we're also we're seeing Ultimate and Absolute and a few other titles that are kind of attached to that bring a new audience in and give them their version of comics. One of the things that happened to me this week was I was dealing with the same thing that you guys are dealing with. Is how am I seeing so much success around me and people are telling me that it's dying? So I put out this call on social media where I said, basically, I think what it is that they're telling the truth and I'm telling the truth. They are just looking at a different part of the elephant, right? The old story about the 4 blind men looking at an elephant. The first one says, well, it's a rope and it's got a little tassel at the end. He was right. The second one says, well, no, it's not. It's like sails from a sailboat. Well, he was right. It was the ears. The third one says, no, it's like a column that's made of concrete that just holds this massive thing up. He was right. It was the legs. And then the last guy is like, no, are you kidding me? This thing is a snake, right? It just moves wherever it wants. It's got a hand at the end. He's looking at the trunk, but none of them sees the whole elephant, right? So because none of them can take it in, none of them recognizes that the rest of them are all telling the truth. So the guys that you hear are saying that this is the death, they're telling the truth. So we have to define what comics is in order to define the weak points. I promise you, I thought I was digressing away from your question, and I found it. We have to define what it is. Is it the direct market? Is it these stores? Is it eBay sales? Is it, I don't know. Is it, I get a daily text almost from Bird City who do these exclusives. I love the fact that they're using text to market to me. Is it those exclusive covers? Is that what comics is? Or is it kid lit, right? Is it Korean romance? Like, what is comics? It's all of those things now. And webtoons and more, right? It is like there's syndicated cartoon, comic strips, still a viable business, right? What is comics? I have my definition, the thing I work on every day, but it would be I don't know, a little too egotistical to say, well, that's all comics is. When that's suffering, all of it is suffering. I don't necessarily believe that. So, but we could talk about the pain points because I did realize I didn't actually answer your question.
Well, I guess that's a good place to establish, when we're having this conversation, when we say comics, what I'm talking about and what I would love for us to talk about here today is the comic book industry. So that
Sure.
is essentially the triumvirate that exists between publisher, distributor, and store,
Yeah.
comic book shop.
Well,
That
thank God, because that
triumvirate.
I can talk to about. The rest of that I
Yes.
cannot talk about. That I can talk about.
I think anybody who talks about anything outside of that and says comics are dying is nuts, because you have Dogman, which is taking over the planet Earth.
Yeah.
You have a lot of really successful young adult stuff. You have webtoons, like you said, mangas, comics. All that stuff is doing gangbusters. The industry of comics, especially if you're talking about North America, that's the subject.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and that's what obsesses me, and that's what I spend 90% of my work days focused on. So that I can talk about. So what are the weak points there? They're the same as they've always been. right? How do we communicate that these for the stores, it's how do we communicate that these community centers are in every community and that you have a place that you can go and that you can hang out and you can get to know them. But that's really, I have come to believe that's as much the store's responsibility, more the store's responsibility than it is the industry's, right? I think every store builds their own market. One of the things I've seen over and over again when I look at sales data in particular neighborhoods or in particular cities is when a store goes under, maybe the owner dies or something that causes it to go under before you normally think like they would be done, right? There's an industry drop and they like, fuck this, I'm out. I'm sorry, can I curse on
Oh
this
yeah.
podcast?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
Fuck yeah.
So when we see a shop go away, we don't see an increase in we do see some increase in the sales of the stores around them, but not 100% is not accounted for. Neither is the sales that go to digital, right? That doesn't really shift in a way that tells you, or digital or mail order. It doesn't really tell you that they are, it tells you that those sales have just gone away, right? They're just not there anymore. And what that says to me is that for those fans that went away, it is as much about the experience. It was more about the experience of going to the comic shop than it was about the comics themselves. Right. And we've all had that. Right. I mean, the reason that we love comic shops is we all have that emotional connection to going in once a week and you hang out with your friends and you know them better than you know your family. And right. And they know you. And when you're down, they bring you up. And when they're down, you bring them up, and all of that, like you are part of a community in that space. So for the comic shops, it's the same as it ever was. They need new audiences. Now we're seeing that. One of the things I loved about this particular week was when I put out this idea about the elephant, about the blind men and the elephant, I had many stores reach out to me and say, I'm selling more new comics right now than I have since I opened the store 15 years ago. Right. That was an actual thing that was said. When I have one guy tell me that he has more high schoolers coming in after school to pick up comics than ever before. Right. That's huge. That is so huge because we worried that we were never going to get that generation back. Right. So for them, we're seeing it. For publishers, I think that, I mean, you can see that long list that I gave that Rich ran. It was, I think that there's many things. This is what I think about the most is how we do grow publishers, because I'm obsessed with, how these people who want to become publishers and even starting from scratch, what are the tools they need? And that's one of the things that I spend my day like thinking about. And what tools can I give? I'm talking to the biggest publishers in the industry, reaching out to me saying, we need you to present this because we need you to create this because we need a third party, somebody who's not a distributor, not a publisher, right? And so I'm able to do that. But really it's these small guys that I love, right? These real estate agents and dentists and people who've always loved comics and went off and found a career and then said, I want to go back and do it. I want to make comics. I love those guys. So I'm always trying to build for them. And so I gave what that list was if you were looking at comics right now as a side hustle that you want to be your full-time job, or if you're working in a publisher that's already established, what are the things that you can be doing right now to look at this content heavy time that we're in? How do you adjust the things that have kept the doors open, and how are the best practices that you've had for the last one that are not working anymore? What are the changes that you can make? And that's what that list really was. So we really addressed it. Distribution, man, these guys are going to fight. We're about to go into a knife fight. And I can say this, knowing who the players are, who their personalities are, and having gotten to know many of them as good friends, I can tell you they are coming in for bear. They are ready to fight it out. Now, will we end up with another diamond with a monopoly? It doesn't seem likely, at least not in the next couple years, maybe 5-10 years down the road. But those guys, I mean, they're fighting over this really beautiful ecosystem where we have these comic shops that keep us all going. Like those people, I don't even pretend to tell them what they need, except right now one of the things that we're trying to put together is a way for those lawyers and real estate agencies, lawyers and real estate agents and dentists, like we're trying to find a path for them to market. And then we're building that. I should have something to announce in the next month or so. But all of that to say, there's plenty of stuff for us to work on, but things are actually not that bad right this second.
It's interesting you're saying that there's this impending knife fight from at least the perspective we've seen, or what I've understood is that there is a hesitancy to even uh, pick up some of the publishers that are kind of smaller. They're a little more
Yeah.
rampant, right? Where the ones that are
Yeah.
currently set up with a Lunar, with a Random House, those are kind of locked in within the respective distributor. But it's
Mhm.
about the smaller publishers that are trying to either consolidate printing in order to be able to meet minimum thresholds. But to hear you say that they're looking to pick up, I guess is a double-edged sword in that it's positive because they are going to lean into the smaller publisher and they're going to try to pick those back up. But if the fight is about volume, then my worry is, oh, there is a volume problem in general with publishing comics.
Yeah. Listen, we can dig into the specifics of what that fight's going to look like. We can all day. And I do think that you're right about one thing. There is going to be the path to market is getting a lot harder if you are one of those smaller publishers, right? There's no way around that. There's a physical limit to the warehousing space of, let's just call them Lunar and Universal. Random House doesn't care about the small publishers. They want to focus in on the big guys and just take care of them. That's kind of who they are in other parts of the publishing industry, and that's who they're going to be here. So let's deal with the two that are going to be the 80%. I'm calling it 80 to 85%. Universal next week becomes the new owner of Diamond. If you want to talk about the spread of possibilities after that last 10 to 15%, we can, but they're not even really worth worrying about.
Not Todd McFarlane.
I think 5%. Todd buys it and gives it back to Steve and says, "Okay, I don't owe you anything else anymore." Right? 5%. That's what's going to happen. I think it's very likely that Todd is going to go to that auction looking for toys. Sure, he's going to be looking for the toy business, but the idea that Todd's going in to buy it's fun. It's a fun thing to talk about, but why? Why would he? The man has like 3 super successful businesses already. Why would he want this one that's so difficult to just shave a 0.25% of margin out of every month? Anyway,
Adam, I have it. I have the documentation. I'm gonna try to make it. I'm gonna try to make it to that auction. I'm gonna put in my $10, and then hey, we'll see if I make it.
Can I come with you? I'm looking for somebody to go with. I would really want to go to this auction just to see how this shit goes down because
genuinely I'm interested.
I was thinking about going too.
Wait, where is it?
It's in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Tuesday?
It's definitely this week. I think it's Tuesday or Wednesday. I'll find out right now.
All right. I tell you what, if you do it, we should all just go and we'll sneak in some video. I'm for it, man. I'll cancel everything else on my plate just to go to watch. I mean, I will tell you, I've heard stories about these. There was a big fight about this for the Valiant thing, and it's a real big part of the lore. If you that wave of Valiant that I was in was the fight over the rights during these the bankruptcy auction, and so the chances, because of that, of having heard those stories, this is my only connection to how these things go down, but my understanding is we're most likely just going to get there and see a bunch of lawyers, right? We're not going to see like Nick Barucci going in and flashing shit. That's not going to happen. We're not going to see Todd roll in 6 deep. He's not going to do that. He's just going to send a lawyer,
right?
So but maybe who knows? It could be fun just to see who shows, right?
Steve, maybe we see Steve.
Maybe we see Steve. Maybe he shows up.
I'll take a picture with Steve.
I wouldn't put it past
Steve J.
put it past Todd though. Like,
Yeah,
Show up in his baseball cap.
exactly. So yeah, what were we saying? Yeah, I think that so Universal and Lunar, they're going to be fighting it out, and for both of them, it's about real estate, right? It's just about square footage. How do you maximize square footage? Universal's plan is to work in the Alliance warehouses, right? There's like I think 4 or 5 of them. I've never been to any one of them, but the difference between the Alliance warehouses and Olive Branch, the big warehouse that Diamond put into Olive Branch, Mississippi, is just like they had so much space that if you sent them a comic book, which is such a dumb thing to distribute, right? It's just a pamphlet that you so delicate. You have to treat it like a baby bird in order to make sure that it shows up on the other side. And how much do you get paid for handling that baby bird? 15 cents, 20 cents. Why would you want to do this? But they did. They created this massive warehouse where anybody who wanted, like, sure. It doesn't, I mean, at this point, it doesn't make any sense to say no. So anybody who wanted a path to market could have it. That's not true anymore. Right now, we've got the Alliance warehouses that are really designed for gaming, and they're going to push in some comics. We've got the Lunar, who has, I mean, they were DCBS. I've been to the warehouse that they're, haven't been. It was the last trip that I took pre-COVID, right? I went there. I went to LA and I went to Fort Wayne and then went to C2E2. And so I was at that warehouse, and that was when I realized, oh, this is the place. At the time, we were actually going to distribute directly from DCBS. But all of that to say, they have a limit to how much they can bring in. There's a limit to the number of vendors that they can service, right? There's a limit to the number of brand managers they can hire to come into their offices. They have really hard limits. And so where does that leave you if you are that lawyer, that dentist, right, who really wants to make comics? Or like let's say you're the next Jeff Smith, right? Everybody talks about next bone. Where's the next bone come from? I think that there's a difference between launching a title now than there was when Jeff was launching Bone. And that difference is that you have so much access that he didn't have, right? You've got Kickstarter, you've got any number of different crowdfunding platforms. You have conventions. Yes, he also had those conventions, but they're completely different animal now. You've got email lists. When Jeff started, Bone, if you wanted a mailing list, he legitimately had to mail you shit. He had to put a stamp on an envelope, right? Now I'm telling every publisher I know, like, your single biggest asset is your email list. And if you're not doing what you can to grow it, you're dying, right? You just don't know you're dead yet. So there are plenty of options for for publishers, for small publishers right now that are not go through comic shops. And I hate to say that because I love comic shops, and so many of them get really protective, and I absolutely should have access to everything that you make for your customers. Listen, I love you guys, but that's bullshit. These guys are running their own businesses. They need to be able to access the consumer. They need to be able to meet their consumers' needs, even if you can't. But especially if you can't, especially if you don't have the real estate because you're paying per square footage. So it's the same problem that the stores have that they have. So if you are that publisher, you need to be building that access. You need to have a direct consumer plan. And there was a period in that, like, just coming out of COVID, where it didn't even matter. It did not matter what you made. So long as you were able to get a few exclusive covers on a book, it doesn't matter what was in it, right? I mean, I don't know how many of those were even opened. That's not the case now. You have to make a quality product. You have to be obsessive about the quality of that book. Is it telling the story that you want? Is the art the very best you can afford, or the very best you can do? Are there any typos? You should see the number of passes that we do on a book before it goes out. I mean, it is, if you count all the number of times that I go through on a book that I'm helping publish, I personally probably go through that book 15 times before it goes to print, right? Looking for refinements. How do we make it better? How do we make it better? How do we make it better? And that's not even me trying to tell a creator how to tell a good story. It's me saying, does this color work? Just let's have a conversation about that, right? Or does this line quite work? Can we maybe, think about it? That's a conversation you need to be having, and you need to be obsessive about that level of quality, because we can no longer just slap an exclusive cover on something and know that it'll sell. So there are things you can do.
I think that's a good place to pause really quick, because you talk about quality of books.
Sure.
And in my opinion, and I think I speak for the other pals, like the quality of comics right now today is, in my opinion, at least as high as it's been in the last decade.
Amen. And it has to be.
And it has to be. And
Yeah.
you can feel it, and you can feel the excitement around that when you look at sales what we have available. A lot of that is, but when you look at what we have available and you hear the conversations that people are having on the ground level, it does feel like, wait a second, you've got the Energon universe, which is
Mm-hmm.
popping off. You've
Yeah.
got Absolute and Ultimate, which are doing gangbusters, but then you also have indie comics, non-IP work that's really great right now.
Yeah.
So the fact that we have all these great books, do you feel like there is or there will be a direct correlation between high quality comics and higher sales?
Oh, 1000%. I cannot agree with that more. When we see a loss of quality, when we take our foot off the gas of what is a quality book, that's when things start to dwindle, right? That's when we're in the danger zone. When you are pushing so hard. Let's look back historically. Let's look at Image, right? The Image founders, they get together, they make this incredible idea of, we're going to go and we're going to band together and we're going to consolidate all of the work that has to be done to publish, and we're going to put out our own books, right? And we're going to own them 100%. Hugely, massively, monumentally successful, right? We today in publishing have zero idea of what that kind of money must have felt like if you weren't involved in it. But that's just it. These were young guys for the most part. Valentino was a straight up grown up during that period, but like the rest of them were just these like young bucks who suddenly had millions of dollars in their pocket. Like no idea what to do. I used to work for Mark Silvestri, and he would talk about, like, they would just go to conventions and fly home, and they would just upgrade at the last minute to first class and be counting stacks of $100 bills like this, right? So they had all of this money coming in, but it was just every time they put out a new book, a new single issue, it was $250,000 in their pocket. So why would they slow that train down, right? If you're Todd, if you're Rob, why do number two? Number ones are always going to make you money, so just put that shit out, right? But so what we saw was a decrease in quality, not just from the Image founders. We saw it elsewhere too. We saw people like really having to rush to market because there's an opportunity to make money right now. And we're in business. We got to go make money when you have to strike when that iron is hot. And so what did we see? We saw an implosion, right? We saw quality go down and we saw an implosion. And I think that's just what we're seeing right now, is that we saw quality go down, we imploded, and then out of that, people said, okay, it's time to go back to basics. Let's make Ultimate. Let's make Absolute. Let's do a fucking, Marvel versus DC. Let's do all the things. Let's put it all on the field, because it's time to pull this back, because we can no longer use the gimmicks. Although I had to say, as a lover of gimmicks, the fact that they're putting those little sound chips in the reprints for the Energon books, come on. How fucking cool is that?
I haven't heard
Yes.
that.
Yep.
You see,
I haven't seen that yet.
I'm so ready for that. I'm gonna have every single one of those.
Yeah. That right there, like getting people to go back in shops, getting people excited about getting in stores again. Like just DC did for the All In books, they had those cards, those Justice League membership cards. And it's like, that's a silly thing, but I'm excited. I'm going to the shop either way. I'm a Wednesday warrior. That's never changing.
Hmm.
But when you say to me, hey, for the thing you already do, here's this really cool, snazzy, nerdy collectible thing, I'm all in on
Yeah.
that. And then you
Yeah.
get a guy like Marco or Tyler who mostly digital, but will go to the shop for a reason. They're showing
Yeah.
up for that stuff too.
Yeah,
It's
I think
blank.
about you should put your
I,
face on there, Marco. Cut it out.
I
Put it
know
in
it's blank. That's it. I don't care. I got it. I got it. I wanted to pick up books.
there. But what it reminds me of is like when I was picking up comics in my heyday of like high school. When I was picking up, they would give me tattoos or they give me lantern rings back during
Yeah.
Jeff Johns' Green Lantern. Like,
Yes. Oh,
that's
yeah. You
what
were
brought
one of
me to
those
the shop.
kids. I sold so many rings. I was like a fucking jeweler for
Oh
a
yeah,
few years there.
I
at a
look like
comics retailer.
Hal with the
Oh
rings on his
man,
fingers.
you had
Yeah.
all the bling. You had all that plastic bling in every color. Oh yeah. I was telling before we got started, I'm obsessed with POP, like the stuff that publishers make to sell books. So I have this mobile. That was the word I was looking for earlier. This mobile that hung from shop ceilings for Image, and this light up sign for when they first put out the trade paperbacks for Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns back
That's
in
cool.
the 80s. Anyway, I'm obsessed with this stuff. This is the I mean, I love that shit because what it says is as a publisher, I'm getting involved in the culture that you're
Right.
building at the store. And I can see it as so valuable that I'm going to invest. I'm going to put my own money into building that environment for these fans. I love that. That's just it's the juice that gets me going. And that's when we see it when the stuff is good, then you can't overspend, right? When the books are as good as they are right now, you cannot overspend on getting in front of consumers because you know that if they grab the book, they're going to come back next week. And that's the brilliance. That right there is the value prop of the comic book shop, right?
Oh,
It's that weekly thing. It's that weekly like obsession of showing up every single Wednesday because you're excited about how good the books are. You're excited to talk about them. You're excited to come hang out with your friends after a stressful middle of the week, and you go and you hang out at the shop and you talk about the new books, or you get so excited that you leave the shop and you go sit in your car and you read them. That's not for us New Yorkers, but we read them on the subway.
Down the train.
But
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You get so excited you have to read them before you get home. That's the shit, man. That's why comic shops work. It's why they're not going away. When all of other brick and mortar should have died, they did not because of that. That's it.
And I think to that also, that habitualization, like
Mhm.
the reason I go into the office on a Wednesday is because if I'm not staying late, I can go pick up some books, and like
Yeah.
that was this past week, and then I sit there reading, Absolute Flash #1 on the train. The guy next to me looking in, he's like, oh, taking little peeks here and there. I'm like, yeah, like that
All
shit's
right, you can
cool.
read over my shoulder. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it's fine. Yeah.
That was awkward when I was reading Saga on the train once. That
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
a
its own
risky on
thing.
what page I'm on there. Yeah.
dude, you got to own that. You got to own that.
Oh yeah. No,
I'm the guy.
I stayed.
I'm that guy.
I stayed true to it.
So, if you are just joining us, we are sitting down chatting with Adam Freeman. Adam Freeman has a YouTube channel called Prana Direct Market Solutions. Prana Direct Market Solutions is Adam's company that is looking at the direct market, looking at where we're at, and offering ways to amplify, offering ways to thrive on every level. Check out the YouTube channel. Great interviews. Um, Thank you guys for listening. 90 plus of you here with us right now. Make sure you smash that like button if you are enjoying the conversation. We've got some super chats we're going to get to right now, and we're going to keep the conversation going with Adam. First up from Dakota X, Spiral Storm, of course, with the $5. Valiant was always my favorite indie comic company. Best indie superheroes in the industry.
Goddamn right. You
Let 'em
goddamn
know.
right.
I remember some
Let
of
'em
my
know.
early comic book podcasting. I was gushing about Secret Weapons. Loved that book.
Oh, wasn't that was so beautiful, that
Oh,
book.
so good.
Oh
Yeah.
man, we had so much fun promoting that book too. Oh, I love that. I would love to hear some of those. You have those archives
That might be in a
somewhere?
hard drive somewhere or a SoundCloud that's
Oh,
currently not being paid for. That'll
come
be
on, man.
somewhere.
We
Yeah.
gotta see it. Um, Yeah, no, I had such a good time. I started off at Valiant. Legitimately, my first gig for them was freelance, part time, not even part time. It was really a full time job. I was calling every comic shop in the 2 years before we launched. And when I say every comic shop, I'm saying I personally spoke to on the phone. I want to say it was like 1,500 different stores, and then like email and contact and all of that with for the rest, as many as we could.
Just cold
So
calling, dude.
goddamn right, man.
Jeez.
I know. It's real, but but it's you want to talk about an exercise that will give you an understanding of what the industry feels like and what it is.
Mm.
I cannot recommend that enough, especially now when it's legitimately it's at your fingertips. It's really simple to go in and go into Google Maps and just say, I'm actually in the process of doing this. So I'm building a map of all the comic shops of this year. And it's just something
Oh.
I'm doing instead of playing video games on my phone. I just pull up Google Maps and I say comic shops, Arkansas. And I go through and identify every comic shop in Arkansas and I add them to this layer. Right. So it's just, I don't know. Like I said, I'm a little obsessed with the comic shops.
You
But
tickled my brain with that right now. That I have that for all of New York City, all of the upstate, almost like Hudson River Valley, and
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
I'm doing a little bit on the West Coast,
Yeah.
in the LA and San Diego area, of just like pinpointing different shops, and then and to the
Yeah.
point of like going to meet these different shops, shake hands, say what's up. Huge shout out to Aaron from Now or Never Comics in San Diego. Really
Yeah.
good guy, and
Oh
to
yeah. Such a cool. I loved that shop. It was such a surprise to me to be at a shop basically in downtown San Diego. And
very
like
nice.
such a great the store design was really nice. He had really great selection. I loved chatting with him. It was a great shop. Yeah.
It
Yeah, big
for
shout out there.
my upcoming newsletter will be exact what you said, just the layout, the conversation I had with him, why these things I feel like worked for the sake of the shop. So for anybody, stay tuned on Patreon.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. I'm gonna have to. I want to have to subscribe because I definitely want to see that. But actually, if you don't mind me get plugging, I'm just starting my own. We have a newsletter called Prana DM, Prana Monthly. We had a monthly newsletter where we would drop a bunch of data, and basically just talk about a bunch of stuff. We're since changing that. I think next week is going to be our first one. I'm calling it the Prana Bullet. It'll be out weekly instead of monthly, and it's just basically if you are interested in the comics industry but you're busy, because most people who work in the comics industry work way too many hours for way too little money. The goal is just to give you one spot at the end of the week where you can go, yeah, okay, got it all. Right. It's just something you can skim, and if you want to dig a little deeper, you can. And where there's going to be some data there that I'm dropping in, like this fan confidence. Or I'm going to be able to give a fan confidence ranking of pre-orders. Right. So in single issue comics that are coming up, who is winning of the pre-order race this week. Right. That's what I'm hopeful to be able to build. Anyway, all this to say, go to pranadm.com and so hit subscribe. It's free. It's not a Patreon. I have not yet learned how to monetize. These guys are teaching me. So, it's but you should feel free. Please do sign up. But yeah, I love comic shops. That's just it. They're just these incredible little anachronistic things that shouldn't exist, but God bless them, man. They make the world better, you know?
I
So
completely agree. And you know who else makes the world better? Atomic Hound. Atomic Hound with the $10 says, "Hey Adam, longtime reader and can recall DC in particular publishing some titles 9 times a year in the 1970s. Would you
yeah.
be in favor of that instead of just generating fill-in issues to meet the monthly grind?" So
Hmm.
essentially, do we need to hit that monthly marker, or should books be comfortable spreading it out a little more, not necessarily 12 issues a year?
That's a really great question. I think at the end of the day, it's you have to understand the business realities of running a publisher, right? So what are anybody who is running a publisher who has people on salary, meaning they've got marketing people, they've got editorial, they're right, they have got even business managers, they've got somebody who's making sure they file the proper paperwork with the state and local governments. Anybody who has a staff, anybody who has a masthead, right, with more than one or two names on it, They got to pay those people, right? And you have to pay those people whether you're inspired or not. And that's what being a professional is. You show up and you do the very best work you can do, even if you don't feel like it. And you know what, man? I mean, I hear what you're saying. Sometimes fill-in issues are true, and we all have our names on books that we're not proud of, which is why we all work so hard to make sure that the stuff we put out we are proud of, right? And which, by the way, don't let me get away from here without plugging The Future Is by Rekka Comics. That's coming up in May. It's available for pre-order, but we'll get to a real pitch for that later. Okay. But I'm saying, like, we've all done that work, but because it's work, right? It's legitimately the thing that you do when you go to work in the morning. Some days you're not great at it, right? Some days you're not the best bus driver on the route. Some days you are definitely not the best lawyer in your practice, right? Some days you're a really shitty dentist. But for the most part, you want to put in the work and do the best you can. Sometimes we don't put out the greatest issues. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't, yes, we should reduce if we're putting out more than we're capable of putting out quality. Yes, 100%. You're absolutely right that at some point you have to say, can we put out this many titles and quality? We did that at Valiant. We limited ourselves to, I think it was at our height, it was something like 6 issues a month, something like that. The reason was we could, but that also meant that that money had to come from somewhere, right? So we had to make the really tough business decision to not make that revenue the thing that was driving and paying salaries.
Yeah, P&Ls, right?
Absolutely, man. That P&L is not going to lie to you at the end of the month, right? Even if you just weren't inspired by the issues that you put out. Yeah. So, I mean, I hear you, man. I hate reading shitty books. I hate paying for books that don't feel like anybody loved them, which is why I try and put so much love into the books that I do get an opportunity to work on. So,
Marco, for dumb creator types like me, what's P&L?
Profit loss.
There we
go.
Matt Fisher with the $4.99 says, "Hello, you tattooed teenage alien fighters from Beverly Hills. First super chat in a week. The model does not need to change. The creator's mindset does." Thank you, Matt, for the $4.99. Glad you're back safe and sound from India. Adam, do you agree, or what's your analysis of the idea that the creator mindset needs to change in order for comics to thrive even further?
Man, once again, I guess we have to ask the question, what is comics? Right? Because there's plenty of, I've got right here, one of my favorite things I picked up at, I think I picked this up at Mocha last year. We had the flu this year. Did you guys go to Mocha? It's here in the...
I went last week. Yeah.
Our household had the flu and I wasn't able to go. But I was sitting here just waiting because I came on early and I was looking around my desk and I found this thing called Dot Comics, right? From this guy whose name is at Pratt, A.T. Pratt. And he does this incredible little book, right? And you can, I don't know if how much light we're going to give it to it. Like, this is the little horror comic that he did, right? And it's going along. It's just pretty standard, kind of underground comics, really fun little horror story. But then you have to undo this ribbon in the middle of the book, and it opens up to this thing.
Yeah, whoa. I've seen this guy at
right?
Cool.
SPX. He goes pretty often.
And then each one of these layers opens and there's more story here, and this narrative just goes deeper and deeper and deeper into this. This is comics, right? It's not Ultimate Spider-Man, but it is comics. So does the creator mindset need to change? Well, I mean, A.T. Pratt is probably never going to pay off his mortgage with Dot Comics #1, right? He put so much love into this thing that he is going to have to figure out another way to pay his rent. Does his mindset need to change? I kind of hope not. I kind of hope he keeps doing whatever he's doing in order to do this, because that is comics too, right? Because the four of us, we work in comics every day, or I do. I don't know what you guys your day jobs are, but I work in comics every day, and this blows the shit out of the back of my head, right? I want him doing that. So I don't know. Does the creator mindset need to change? Sometimes sometimes. I mean, I know that I had certain ideas of how things should work. Should, that's a weird word. I had certain ideas about how things should work when I started working professionally in comics, and many of them were absolutely wrong. They just didn't hold up to the end of the day. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
I love it.
I think
Yeah.
it is knowing what lane you're in though as a creator,
Sure.
and maybe
And what lane you want to be in.
exactly, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sure like what'd you say his name was? Art
A.T. Pratt. This
A.T.
guy?
Pratt, yeah, A.T. Pratt, yeah. Like
Yeah.
he probably doesn't care about Diamond. Like that's not his lane.
No.
But
No,
for
he's
somebody
not
like a
worrying
Mark
about
Waid or
distribution in
something,
comic
yeah,
shops.
exactly, yeah.
Can you imagine what the solicitation for this must look like?
Oh.
No way.
Previews doesn't have pop-up capabilities. Yeah.
Well, not
Well,
anymore.
yeah.
We got real close to figuring out. No, not really. As the one of the guys behind the only people who ever dropped a secret comic into previews and made that particular issue sell out of Previews magazine, sell out like for the first time in decades. I feel a lot of pride about being able to innovate inside of Previews magazine. But yeah, it's he doesn't care about that, and he shouldn't care about that. I don't want him caring about that as an audience member.
Yeah.
Could he become the next, I don't know, Sienkiewicz? Maybe, right? Maybe he has that in him if that's what he wanted to be, but he wouldn't be able to do this.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't know. Should his mindset change? I try not to tell creators how to think. I just try and give them what the deadline is, and hope that they made it. Yeah,
let them
Check in,
create,
Project
but on
Edge.
time.
exactly.
Hio with the 9.99 says, I think a big problem is that the big two's not even selling in big retailers. Went to a Walmart recently and you see Scholastic or manga, no big two. You'd think with compacts they would be there, but no. This is such a. This point is brought up all the time.
Well, I will tell you that there is. Oh no, go ahead and finish your question. I haven't answered.
Just of the fact that the big two, the comics need to be back in big box stores, the comics need to be in your grocery store, they need to be wherever people are, airports, everything like that. And I have an understanding of why it's not like that anymore. I think a lot of people don't understand why it's not like that anymore. Can you please, from your position, explain why comics are not in Walmart to that degree and why they're not everywhere?
Well, there's two things here. One, I'm going to push back on they're not. DC recently did a deal where they are essentially, I think it's bundles, like they're doing the
Yeah.
bundles where they're selling in. And my understanding, I'm trying to figure out if I've heard this in a way that's not insider information, that's going to get me in trouble with this particular source. So, but my understanding is that relationship has been so positive that they are beginning to sell them other product. Right. Let's put it that way. I can say that I have others. There's more to that kind of conversation, but I don't want to get too far into it and get
Are
someone
you
in trouble.
talking about the relationship with Dollar Tree?
The relationship with Dollar Tree, but also the relationship with, I think it's Target. It was carrying
Target.
those bundles.
I think so.
And it might have been Walmart too. I don't know. I'm not,
because I remember Walmart was doing, obviously the DC and Walmart had the relationship with the Universe books. But
and that's continuing. Is my understanding. That's continuing.
Okay.
So I want to push back a little bit and say that there is some of that. But this is a big but. When we saw newsstands, right? What we for those of us that are old, the olds in the room, we remember newsstands. We remember going to 7-Eleven and seeing comics right up next to Cosmo, right next to Men's Health, all of those things. Time magazine. We all read magazines. That was the other thing, is that as a culture, we read magazines. We had subscriptions to magazines, would show up to our house, and every bathroom had a stack of magazines in it. We don't have that anymore, right? We have a culture of getting information through devices. That's what our culture is now. So there's this idea that if we just put the product in the places where there is that where people are, that the culture would somehow shift. And that's just not the way commerce usually works. right? You know, Mr. Beast didn't put out, his line of, I don't know, I'm trying to pick something really random that we
His-
don't
his
that we don't use on
burgers.
it. Yes, exactly. Well, he didn't, you know what? He didn't do prepackaged burgers at the countertops. He went into chocolate, right? Because we buy chocolate. That's what we do. Like I mean, we are chocolate consuming culture. So we no longer read magazines. We no longer read periodicals. We do not read newspapers as a general rule. So we kind of need these kind of places where you can where there is someone there developing the culture of reading, right? The comic shop, where we have someone who is there to say, this is how you read it. Yes, it's going to come in monthly, and yes, I will hold it for you so it won't sell out, so you can come in and you talk to me and you have a relationship with me and you pick it up. Now, does that mean I no longer have stories about little kids who have to hit every 7-Eleven once a week in order to try and get their run of Justice League? Absolutely, that's what that means. But we also don't. I mean, when's the last time you read a magazine that you bought at a countertop? Seriously, any of you? Have you?
Even the ones I've seen are like special edition ones that are specific to
Exactly.
I never have.
Star Wars anniversary. Here's a new
That
like
would-
Time issue of it or Entertainment Weekly.
And my generation of comics readers, we have that ingrained in our histories. Like that was our daily life, was magazines and newspapers and periodicals. So this idea that if we just, build it, they will come. It's a nice idea. It just doesn't really work. It just doesn't work.
I used to work
The
at
reason those
yeah.
Archie comic digests were there for so long was just because of how good of a deal that they made in order to get those out there. Like it's just a really difficult challenge from a business standpoint.
I used to work at a Barnes and Noble, and Barnes and Noble has a huge magazine section.
Right.
And when I worked there, I would say it's probably going around like 15 years at this point ago. That place was crowded. People would be sitting down
Sure.
there reading the magazines too and having a coffee from the cafe or whatever. I've been to that store again recently. Nobody there. The magazines are still there, but that community and the people sitting down reading them, that doesn't really exist.
Exactly.
The board game section expanded 5 times as big. And the magazine section is, I think, one less like stanchion smaller at this point.
Yeah,
So it's just the things
exactly.
have shifted.
And the thing is those magazines, Barnes and Noble isn't paying for those magazines, right? They're ordering them and they're only paying for what sells. So they can't even give that any real estate at all. It says is because those publishers are still able to sell advertising. And so that's the other piece of this, right? If we want to get into really where this is something that I am personally really involved in, because I am the business manager of ZCN, Zdarsky Comic News. It comes out in comic shops monthly, right? And it's Chip Zdarsky started this just as a goof of, promote all the books that he was doing because he's working with a bunch of different publishers. And it really took off and it got to be too big. He couldn't handle it anymore. And so we met and he said, I need help with this. And I said, oh, I'm looking for something in this space. So I'd like to try it. Anyway, I can say that this is a success because we're able to sell advertising, right?
Mhm.
Because what we're able to, the value prop that we're able to give is let's put your ad in front of people, comics buyers, at the moment they're making the decision to buy. One of the things that I've done over the years is interviewed people in comic shops. I've done surveys. I've had other retailers do surveys. And what the conclusion that we came to was 87% of people who are buying comics make the decision at the shop. They don't listen to podcasts. I'm sorry, guys. This is the case, right? They don't read any online sites. They just go to the comic shop and they buy what's there. And they talk to the guy behind the counter and they say, what's good? And that girl that they're obsessed with who works the counter, she says, you should buy this. And they say, okay, and that's how they make that decision. Exactly. So the reason that we're able to do ZCN as well as we are is because we're able to sell those ads. We actually sell it to the retailer for less than it costs to print.
Wow.
So, and so the retailer can give it away for free. all of that to say, there is that you know how difficult it is for me to sell ads in this space, right? Time and place right now. Like there was a time, all of those magazines that you're talking about at Barnes and Noble did not pay for them to put them on the shelves. The publishers paid, for many cases, paid for the spot that they're in. And in fact, in Barnes and Noble, anytime you see books on an end cap, the publisher paid to put those books on that end cap, right? But the reason the magazines was because they were 65% ads. The articles were there to keep the ads from bumping together, right? That's like the whole point of that was just an advertising engine, and we don't have that culture anymore. We spend our ad spends for the most part marketing people on online ads, right?
Yep.
Because you can see a direct sale coming out of that, or you can see some direct feedback. Getting direct feedback from a print ad is a challenge that we're working on a regular basis with our advertisers, but it's a challenge. It's no longer as simple as it once was.
And I gotta
Yeah.
imagine part of the challenge is that online ads are so specific to whose phone is you're targeting. You can
Well,
target so minuscule. Like I have a cousin who was like targeting men 25 to 35s for a speed dating event, which you can do for like just a tiny area. You can't do that in print. And I think that's why in print comics, all the ads are for Marvel Comics is Marvel Comics ads.
Yeah. Well, but it's really interesting. It's fun that you talk about this. It's something that I really enjoy talking about. So as a result, I see it a lot. We're seeing things where marketers are beginning to understand print advertising can be really local, right? So newspapers can be hyper local. You can put ads into spaces. There's a huge marketer. I won't say his name because at some point I'm going to be announcing him as a client because he's going to come into the comic space. But he's this massive marketer, makes ads for Super Bowl ads, right? For different clients. He's making his own line of comics. So as a result, I've been talking to them, and one of the things they're doing is doing newspaper ads again. Why? Because we know that we're selling to somebody who is literate, and we can know exactly where they live. We can insert something into the newspaper that is by zip code, right? I mean, granted, you're not hitting all the young men in speed dating, but you are hitting every literate person in that, in that zip code. That's really valuable. So some of this is shifting back, but it's happening slowly.
Yeah.
Not only literate, but somebody willing to pick up physical media.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We're doing so. We're trying to lean into more like traditional media because yes, you have you can attribute all of your performance, but in order for you to get like mass reach, you're not gonna be able to measure it. Fine, you have to swallow that, but you have to be able to hit people in large chunks. And you're right, you can hyper target based off of zip code, but you can even cross-reference that with people's household income, with their individual commute, because you can track people their locations through everything. So you can start to make these associations where you can say, hey, actually, this singular zip code out of all of these have a higher propensity for XYZ, and from there be able to deliver there's a Walgreens that is closed. Oh no, Walgreens that's closing by me. The local pharmacy took out just like little flyers and spread them all out into the mail saying, hey, this place is closing, we're still open, go check us out. It literally in our neighborhood with maybe a 10-block radius.
And junk mail. The other thing that you kids don't understand these days is junk mail.
I hate it.
Every single day you had like a ream of paper in your mailbox of junk mail. We don't get that anymore. We still get, like, I don't know about you, but I get like, credit card offers 5 times a week, but I don't get like, the local dentist sending me a postcard. I don't get this new restaurant just opened up. I don't get a flyer for. Like, we should be seeing that more, but but again, marketing, advertising, it's all a creative hustle, right? We're all trying to experiment and understand a little better. But that, again, to get back to the question, that's why you don't see comics in those spaces, because at some point we decided to focus in on cover price versus advertising, right? Because that was the key. If I go to a magazine, even today, let's say here, I bought a bunch of art magazines for an experiment that we're working on right now. And it's funny that we're actually beginning to see art magazines shift the other direction. But at the time, this magazine, like when comics was really making the shift, this magazine would have been, probably $5 or $6. At the same time that a comic, of a similar ilk would have been $3 or $4. This is, what is this? We call this 200 pages, right? And it's going to be 50 to 65% ads, right? That's how this model works. We made the decision in comics to not focus on ads. We decided to focus on we'd make the revenue on the cover price. And that model still holds today. Although I think we can change that too. I think you're going to start seeing more ads in comics.
We used to have reps for Marvel, for DC, and
Mhm.
that has gone away, because you're right. Like, and I remember being more ads. That we were old client. I used to work for White Castle. We
Mm.
pe Comic book readers love fast food. That
Yeah.
just makes sense. Like, and we can target based on zip within a certain proximity to a White Castle.
And now what you see is in Marvel and DC specifically in Marvel, what you see is you do still see some ads, but they are value ads for licensors. So you can say, if you buy this license for our t-shirts, we're going to throw in this ad that our ad rate card says is $10,000. So we're going to give you a $10,000, value for signing, for buying this license. It's not 10. They can't sell that for 10 grand, but it's still, but actually previews, we talked about Previews magazine. Diamond loved playing that game as well. The number of publishers who I talked to say, I had $60,000 annually in media. You didn't have 60. They couldn't sell that value for $60,000. It's just how that business works. So.
Do you think that so obviously tariffs, the impending
Sure.
just cover price increase, do you think that then the introduction of advertising will be a way to combat the
I hope so.
costs, like to offset any price increases in the short term, and ideally, um, I guess, and ideally in the long term too?
I hope so. And you know what? Let's deal with tariffs. I don't know. We haven't had that question yet. I can tell you that right now I'm not as worried about tariffs as I surely was going into this year. For a couple of reasons. One, there's some new printers on the scene, and everybody's competing for the same, value. So we're seeing the Canadian printers. We're seeing them really compete for pricing in a way that I didn't expect. And we're seeing these new US printers kind of enter the market. They tend to be like magazine printers. Well, they don't know a whole lot of magazines anymore. So they have all this equipment that allows them to make magazines that can be basically the trim size changes, and they do a saddle stitch versus a perfect bound. And suddenly you're making, a comic book. So they have that ability. We're seeing them come into the field and begin to compete. We're also beginning to see a lot more American paper than I thought we had, because when we post, like in the middle of COVID, we had this incredible paper crisis that came out of the fact that nobody was going to the Canadian paper mills because they were all being told they had to stay home for COVID. We're not seeing that as much as I thought it was going to be. We still have a problem with Chinese ink and Chinese steel for the plates. That's still an issue. But that tariff is a lot less harsh than we're seeing for the Canadians. So I'm not as worried about tariffs as we were. But to get back to your question, I think that you're right. We're going to start seeing people shift around the model, right? What does it take to get comics out? It always shifts. It always changes. Is it the ability to sell ads? I think that's a big piece, and I hope we get that place, because that takes less of the burden for the revenue off of the consumer, off of the retailer. I would love to see that spread out. Well, I hope so. We have a plan for that for a couple publishers that I'm working with. We have some ideas on how to tweak that. And, if you work for a marketing company and you're looking to get some value inside of comics, come talk to me. I can get you some eyeballs there, my friend.
Ooh, we'll
Yeah.
chat.
All right.
One of the points of emphasis that you had was build community.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And as a podcaster and someone who just in general believes that building community is a skill that you have to have if you want to reach people. This is something that really bothers me about comics.
Yeah.
So you talked about how, there are lots of podcasts, there are, Discords, there's all these things
Sure.
that exist that are places where fans congregate. I don't own a comic shop, but I definitely do own this, and our Discord server has hundreds of people on it, right?
Yeah.
And our show gets thousands of listens. So how come CB Sapolsky's not on here?
That's
right?
a great question.
How come we, and forget us, any channel that has a large following, any channel that can promote books, we've sold books by interviewing Jason Aaron. We've sold books by interviewing Jeff Johns. We've helped all these people. Why is there no concerted effort to set up a relationship with a podcast like ours and get creators on here? Why are publishers not committed to that, especially at the big two? It is harder to get a conversation with a big two creator or bigwig than it is. Like, I could get Jeff Johns on the phone right now easier than I could do that. I can't. There's no way. There's no lane.
Yeah, man, you're right. There's a lot. Actually, there's a lot to dig into there. So let's talk about community first, and then we'll talk about the challenge of marketing in this day and age. Let's hit those 2 points. First off, let's talk about community building. I have a client, Recca Comics. We're putting out a book called The Future Is. It's coming out in May. It is available for pre-order now. It's exclusively through Lunar. So if your comic shop has a Lunar account, they can pre-order it. They can actually, we've put up the entire first issue PDF available online right now. Okay. All of that to say, this company, Recca Comics, comes from a cybersecurity company called Black Hills Information Security. Massive cybersecurity company. If you don't know what these people do, they do something called pen testing, which is penetration testing. They will go to a big organization, like, big governments, and say, here are the weak spots in your security. And not just your website, not just your servers, but also your there's these people, these red hats, not the red hats, am I getting that right? Red team, rather, or the red team people who, like, legitimately they are burglars. Like, their job is to break into these office buildings and to get to the server where they're not supposed to be. Their job is to go into a bank and charm their way into putting a thumb drive into one of the ports and, like, take over the system. These guys are incredible. They're incredible. Anyway, I'm really getting off track. But this company, Black Hills Information Security, they don't do any advertising. We're talking about a company that does tens of millions of dollars of revenue every year that doesn't buy a single ad. And you know why? They give it away. They give away the stuff that they learn. And they do it through podcasts. They do it through web what am I talking about? Like, live web feeds. Why am I not getting that word?
Webinar?
The thing we're doing right now, live streams. They do it through that. They do. They have Discord. They have a Discord channel with 100,000 people, 5,000 active users per week. Right. That's a massive company, but they leaned all the way into community. Right. They have these meetings, these hack fests that I just went to one last year at Deadwood, South Dakota. You cannot get, there's the closest airport is 2 hours away. And yet there were like 500 of these guys and women, like it was 50-50, legitimately just showed so excited to hang out for a week with each other. Amazing culture. And all they did was just build on culture. All they did was build on community. So is it worth it? Absolutely. And if you don't have some sort of pipeline for that, why even bother in this day and age? Just go be an accountant, right? Don't bother trying to do something creative.
DC has their Discord community, which has blown up. They do a lot of cool stuff on it.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I've never been able to access it, but
That's a problem.
I would only love to participate at some point.
Yeah. So
even like Marvel is owned by Disney. Disney has a D23 club that people can buy into and then, like, go to special events for and stuff like that. But Marvel, like the Merry Marvel Marching Society was a thing, but isn't a thing anymore.
I think you're right about that criticism of Marvel, and I think that they really should. I mean, hopefully, maybe somebody's watching this. I know I have some friends there. We're working with them on a couple projects, but well, I have hope. I have hope. Anyway, all of this to say, absolutely, community. It's the only way around at this point, right? We're all selling. Every market is a micro market. There's no more mass market, right? There is no more Friends that we're watching on Thursday night. It just doesn't happen anymore. We all, there's 4 people here. We all love comics. We all love the same things, but I guarantee you that my next Netflix queue looks completely different than yours, right? There is no more mass market. So we have to pull together the communities that we are. That's number one. Now let's talk about being a publisher and trying to market in this day and age. There was a time when, and I'm going to say the heyday of this was late 90s, early teens, or not late 90s, late aughts, early teens, right? When we're launching Valiant during that period. If you're launching a publisher during that period, your biggest, the most valuable relationships you have are with the comics news sites, CBR, Newsarama, The Beat, right? Bleeding Cool, right? Those relationships were what sold books for you. That doesn't, I mean, there are some really great sites right now. There's The Beat, there's Popverse. Bleeding Cool is still, I still have love for Rich Johnson.
I love Rich.
But they are still valuable, but they are not crucial. Like you can have a successful launch and only, they find it on their own, right? So what I'm saying about this is we don't have that ability to get an exclusive announcement and have it actually have impact anymore. We don't have that press list that you cultivate over the years, and if you just put out a properly written press release, you're going to get coverage. We don't have that anymore. What we have is this vast network of channels like yours that are, I mean, you guys are on the bigger side, 3,000 to 5,000 people. I mean, is that right? Am I getting that right? You're in that?
Yeah, we're just shy of 5,000. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you're on the bigger side, right? And honestly, we should be buying ads from you, right? We should be sending you press releases so that you can talk about it. We should be negotiating releases with you. Absolutely. We should be negotiating interviews with you. But the problem is that we're no longer, my relationship with you gets me 5,000 people. My relationship with CBR in the day got me 50,000 people, 100,000 people. And that's with the same amount of work, right? And I've only got so many hours in my day. Here's what I would challenge you to do is to build a network. And this is something I've thought about putting my efforts into because it's one of those tools that I would love to have. But I would challenge you to build a network of places like you that I can build one relationship. So let's say, for instance, instead of me having to deal with Comic Pals, I'm dealing with your agent, right? Who is setting these things up. And that agent is also working with this channel over here and this channel over here and this channel over here. And all I've got to do is work with that guy. And he's going to get me 3 interviews that I don't have to schedule, right? And that I don't have to do the background labor for. I just show up, it shows up on my calendar. I come in and I hit my bullet points and I chat and I laugh at some of the super chats and I enjoy that, like in relationship. That's what this should be, right? Because that's what it is for radio.
Ad networks.
You guys need an ad network. You need that. And you should have that. Like at this point, it's so crucial because we don't have anything like it as a publisher. Like we build some relationships here and there. But if you guys don't reach out to us, and then, and if you're, let's say you're a Marvel or a DC, the reason you're not getting through is not because they don't want attention. It's because they only have so many hours in the day too. And they get everybody requesting from them. So if they had one agent, maybe that should be something that Prana does. We'll see. We'll chat later, right?
Yeah.
But like if you had one agent who said, all right, you guys have a launch coming out in May. I'm going to put you on this one, and this one. These guys, they really going to want to talk more about business. This guy, all he wants to talk about is Flash, right? And so just lean into the Flash of it. Like, I'm going to give you these bullets, and then you show up and you do, you be you. Yeah, that's the way it should work. It's just not there yet. So I feel your frustration, because we feel it on the other side, because we want that. We want to reach your 5,000 people, but we really, we just don't have time, you know?
Do you think there's also an issue with Big Two, DC, and Marvel, where they have media sections where they can just do that themselves? DC just came
Exactly.
out with a podcast within the last couple months that they have,
That's right.
guests
Yeah.
on.
They can put the same amount of
yeah.
effort into having their own podcast, and that's their own community, right? That's their own audience.
And we're not hitting the Marvel YouTube channel numbers, Yeah.
If they invest in that versus investing in you, because it is an investment in time. I'm investing, part of my Saturday morning with you guys. Why? Because I see the value in what you're interested in talking about. When I watched that episode with Chris Arendt, shout out to Popverse, like I was like, oh well, these guys speak my language, right? They're interested in the stuff that I work on every day. But like, if you didn't reach out to me, I don't know that I would have seen it. I'll be honest. Like, there's only so many hours in the day, and I research what I can, but it is what it is, right?
Right here, agent.
Well, we'll talk later. I have we've got a way we could probably work this out. Yeah.
I really want to tackle the I really want to tackle the fan confidence rating.
No, let's do it.
And
I love this thing.
we are about to get into that, and we talked about this last week. You guys definitely want to hear about this, because the fan confidence rating concept is something that can really change the game for comics. So we are going to talk with Adam about that and a lot more stuff. Make sure you guys are checking out Adam's YouTube channel. That's Prana Direct Market Solutions, at Prana DMS. You can also follow Adam on social media at Adam Bang Freeman. All of that stuff. All right. Now,
I don't post as much online as I used to, but yeah.
who
PranaDM.com
does,
with newsletter. Go to that. That's what's absolutely.
sign up for the newsletter.
Yeah.
I'm signing up for the newsletter because that's the stuff that I love. I love the deep industry stuff. So I'll be there.
Yeah,
I already did for the podcast, just FYI, earlier.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Now, I do want to shout out our patrons. Patreon.com/The Comics Pals is the best way to support us and what we do here. We don't have any advertisers. You guys are our biggest supporters. So special shout out to our Pals vs. Legends, Thunderstruck Rebecca Alejandro, the Hound of Justice, Atomic Hound, who is with us, Starcross Catherine Stars, who's in the chat, Red Spiral, Spiral Storm, who's with us, Adam and Bernie the Best Boy, the Spear of Judgment, Jace Jumble, Matthew Malice Price, Jalen Jackson, the Sanguine Sorcerer. And I also want to thank the Palsverse members, the Night Stalker, Harris Nijinsky, Brian Demolisher Del Pozo, Kefis the Incorruptible, Momentum Mike Elliott, who's with us, Dan the Truth Trudeau, Marley's Manastorm, Slow Flow Dameron, who I saw, Bada Boom Podcast, that's Slow Flow's podcast. Check it out. Christian, Uncaged, Always Laughing, The Spear of Justice, Izzy's Issues, The Great Destroyer, Hyper Viper 89, Robert, Runback, Cashaback, Pete the Dreamweaver Collins, James, Just Jamming Jones, Paul, Powerhouse Smith, Andrew the Galaxian Smith, Neon Knight, The Cosmic Avenger, Matthew the Shade, Cosmo, BJ Kicks, The Living Blade, Boss from Deer, The Grand Alchemist, Chop Harder Alchemist, John Barrier B, and Doomsday David Melendez Doria. If you did not hear your name and you know you're supposed to, we will be getting to the rest of our patrons a little later. Thank you all so much for your support.
I love that tease. Come back and hear your name at the end. If you didn't hear your name, you better be listening at the end of this episode. God, yeah, I love that. Good job.
I've been doing this for a little while. Thank you.
No kidding, man. I'm gonna take lessons from you guys. This has been so enlightening getting to know your channel. This is wonderful.
We can talk, like you
absolutely.
said. We can
Please do.
talk. Now, the fan confidence rating.
Thank you.
This is something that Adam Freeman and Prana Direct Market Solutions have generated in-house. They have come up with this, and I thought it was brilliant. And so what it measures is how strongly we are feeling about any given comic, any given store, whatever it is, by analyzing subscriptions and pre-orders. Which this is coming from Sketched. I read the Sketched article that you did with David Harper. I loved it. It was brilliant. And in that, he included this image, which is probably on your website, but it's an image that talks about how you arrive at the fan confidence rating. And one
Yeah.
of the things it says is early indicator gives retailers and publishers alike data to adjust strategy to orders. That is something that we need desperately. And I want you to talk about it at length, but I want to explain as a fan how I read that and why I'm excited about it. Because what that says is that if you, as a fan, want to jump in on something, but you don't know if it's the next big thing, you don't know if you should be excited about it, there is a fan rating that says, hey, people are hyped about this. This is something that you want to be in on the ground floor for. A store can say, wow, the fan confidence rating for the new Energon book is really high. We're going to put our ad spend, we're going to put our efforts into making sure that people know about this because people are excited. So that helps you, it helps the store, but then it also helps the publisher by being able to say, wow, there is motivation behind this. Let's make sure we're thinking about that next printing. Let's make sure we're thinking about reaching stores that are selling out on this book and talking about how we can interact and engage more. Those are the reasons why I'm excited about it. Adam, please speak to it.
Listen, the in marketing, in advertising, in sales, in politics, right? Let's talk about when we get around to an election every year. What is the thing you hear about most? You hear about polls, right? You hear about we contacted 1,000 likely voters, and 87% of them think that this guy's take on this is what they want. That's what we need, right? You need if you were running a campaign, a political campaign, you need the pollsters out there in the field telling you what it is that people want and where you're failing, right? Not only is this thing succeeding, we need to double down, we need to put like a mobile up, but like, is this thing failing? This thing that we loved, that we know is going to be really good, are we not getting that message through? We've not had that. Now, I will say that this has been a labor of love. We haven't figured out a way to monetize it yet, but we're getting close. But it has become this thing that I needed as a marketer, as a sales guy, right? We did when I was at Valiant, I was just leaving Valiant, and I knew that I was working on my next big thing, and I saw a POS company who I no longer work with. But I saw that he had some of this data. He was showing me Ultimate Fantastic Four, number one, how we saw pre-orders here, but we saw sell in here. And he said, this book is going to drop like a stone when we get to number two. And sure enough, it did, right? Because pre-orders were not in line. It was not an in-line percentage. Right, exactly. So I became obsessed with this idea. I got really involved in that particular POS project. Point of sale, not piece of shit. Point of sale. Want to make sure that I'm talking to the audience I'm talking to. Anyway, but that relationship died, and then I went looking for this. I now have relationships with two other point of sale systems. Managed Comics is our primary one. They run around 230 stores, and we're bringing in the Comic Shop Assistant stores, and I think they're in the 50 to 80 range. They're growing. They're new but growing. We're going to have probably 300 to 350, possibly 400 stores by the end of this year. Now, how are we using that data? Right this second, we don't really have enough data. We talked earlier about the challenge of Circana, NPD Group, Bookscan, whatever they're called at any given time. What the challenge of 85% of that coverage looks like and how difficult that is to achieve. But what we do have is this poll, right? This survey set, this set of stores that we can see really granular information from. We only see it in the aggregate. I don't see individual stores, but I can see, for instance, what is the total number of subscriptions and the total number of pre-orders for this single issue across all of these stores. Why is that interesting? Well, because it's not interesting in and of itself, right? It's really, we're talking about really small numbers when we're talking about 230 stores, but we are talking about this in relation to what they end up ordering, and then what they end up stocking for the shelf, and what they end up selling through on the end, right? And whether they actually put into a sales bags and take money for. We're going to get to all of those points and begin to report on all of those points at some point. There's some technical challenges, some coding challenges, some things we have to work out, and it's going much slower than I want. I mean, we started talking about this in October, and here it is March, and I was hoping to be a lot further along. But like I said, this has been a labor of love. But what I am able to do right now is tell you the overall fan confidence rating of single issue fans for the stores that we're looking at. And that's that chart. I will send you the newest. Actually, I'm about to put out the newest one in our newsletter next week. I was trying to get it out yesterday, but it wasn't there. It just did not happen. But what we're seeing is that chart that there's a graph that I'm showing of what is fan confidence for single issues looking like. And we are right this second at the highest point we've been in 2 years. And it has been this sort of, it's a jagged line to get there, but we're seeing overall, we've talked about this earlier in the conversation, we're seeing this like general increase. We're digging now into I believe the bullet, which once again, go to pranadm.com and hit the subscribe to the newsletter. We want to make sure that we're putting that out to an audience that wants to see it. My goal is to be able to put out a ranking on a week-to-week basis and a ranking I can do without giving away specific sales numbers. I can say, for the books that are coming out, this is highest, this is lowest, right? This is what's going to be selling the most when it hits the shelves in 2 weeks or in, 2 months or whatever, depending on where we're at in that cycle. I can do that right now. So there's a limitation to the data that we're in, but the biggest limitation right this second is what are the important questions that publishers need to know? What are the important questions that people, the pundits, right, for lack of a better word, for people like us who talk about comics, the industry of comics in public, what are the important things that we need to know? Those questions actually are surprisingly hard to get to on your own. So we really kind of have to be having these conversations and listening to the questions that you have about this data so that we can begin to ask those questions in a really meaningful and impactful way. So
I want to provide an example that I think is really important to the conversation. Now, Ultimate Spider-Man, the new one, the current one, notoriously was under-ordered by stores. Stores were not prepared for how big of a juggernaut that book would end up being.
Right.
Had the fan, the fan excitement, had we had a way to analyze that through the fan confidence rating, stores could have known that Ultimate Spider-Man was something people really wanted. It wasn't the fact that there wasn't interest. It was the fact that stores didn't have an awareness of the level of interest. So think about how much money some stores left on the table by simply under ordering a juggernaut comic. You think they wouldn't like to go back to the beginning of 2024 and have the fan confidence rating and do things a little bit differently? Of course they would.
Of course.
That's an easy example of why this is so important.
Yeah, and it's something that we I think about a lot. That's actually a really great example because when I was a retailer when the first Ultimate Spider-Man came out, and we had exactly the same problem. Some of us saw it and we over ordered, and a lot of people just didn't, and it caught them off guard. But yeah, we're in that process now, and I will say Ultimate Spider-Man is the number 2. I'm looking at data from what is this? This is for February. Yeah. So number 2 highest pre-ordered behind Absolute Batman. So it goes Absolute Batman, Ultimate Spider-Man, Batman, Ultimate Superman, Ultimate Wonder Woman, Uncanny X-Men, then Ultimate Wolverine, and then X-Men, Transformers. That's the top 10. So we are seeing that like it does come back around, because people do begin to subscribe. But that's also, I think, we're talking mostly to fans here. That also is a real reason why you need to be subscribing, right? You need to have a pull list at your comic shop if you want to make sure that you're getting these books, not only to guarantee that you get them, but so that the store has as much data as possible about your interest. So if you are
You can
wanting
upsell at
to,
that point. Like
yeah,
you can be like, hey, this the volume of this it's a hot book. Now is the time to get your pull list.
exactly it. And that's why many, like, from one of the reasons why I want this data to be out there and for fans and everybody to look at is because I want the publishers to know that how valuable it is to push people to subscribe, right? That is a huge part of the sales process of getting a book to market, is encouraging fans to actually take action and add to their subscription. Because the retailer, I mean, many of them, I will say, I've trying to show this data, and they're like, I'm not really interested in that, what the whole industry is doing. I'm interested in what's happening in my store. Reasonable, 100% reasonable. But that does say how crucial the average fan is to the success of a book. Is that if you are subscribing, you're more likely to see that retailer say, okay, well, I've got subscriptions for 10 copies of this thing. I might as well I might as well order 15 because I'm covered, or 20. I mean, that can make all the difference in the world for the launch of, especially an indie title, is if there are subscriptions in place. So, yeah.
In that formula, what is the highest weighted input? Is it the subscription because you want to be able to gauge the value of the subscription over the sale?
As a marketer, as a retailer,
Oh, I guess as a retailer.
as a retailer, retailers, generally speaking, are looking. It's been my experience, and I will tell you that the thing about comics retailers is if you ask 10 of them a question, you're going to get 15 answers, right? They are the reason, one of the reasons why they will never go away is that they are all so unique and so difficult to well, it's really difficult to have a chain. Like, there's a Barnes and Noble for comics has never happened, I think, partially because they're all so different and it's so
They're not a
difficult to get
monolith.
them. Exactly. So but that, all of that said, if you most comics retailers are looking at the P&L on that department, right, in their sales, and they're adjusting their targeted sell-through date based on that, right? So if they want 100% sell-through on day one, then they're just going to order the subscriptions. That's just it, right? If they have much more confidence and they want to make sure that there's copies on the shelf when issue 2 or issue 3 or issue 4, maybe the end of the arc, they're going to order a little heavier based on those subscriptions. But I would say nearly every retailer I know bases their final order on those subscription numbers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't understand that. And so let's put a fine point on it.
Mm-hmm.
Sell through versus sell in. So sell in,
Sure.
and correct me if I'm misunderstanding, sell in is the sale to the shop. And then sell through is the sale to the consumer. Now, because margins in comics are so thin, a lot of shops will say, all right, we're going to look at our subscription numbers, and this is Void Rivals. Void Rivals is a bad example because that book's great and it's selling a lot, but it's the book that came to mind. All right, Void Rivals, we've got 15 people subscribed. I'm not hearing a ton of buzz about this. I can't really afford to go all in. I'm going to order the subscription amount plus 1.
Right.
I'm going to order the subscription amount plus 2, right? And hope that those couple of additional books I ordered sell. But I'm not going to go hard and order 20 or 25 or 30, because if I do that and only my subscribers pick it up, I'm left holding the bag with 15 additional copies, which doesn't sound like a lot, but again, those margins are really thin. So it actually is a lot, which is to underscore how important it is if you're not like my LCS is Midtown Comics, I don't have a worry. But
Yeah.
if your LCS is small, you do have to worry. You
Sure.
have to have a pre-order. You have to have a pull list.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly right. It's really interesting that you brought up Void Rivals as the example for this, because they are the example of someone who did an incredible job of having a conversation with retailers about why they should be ordering that book. Just to plug my own podcast for a minute, if you go into the Comic Industry Insiders and you look for Morgan Perry, she tells the story about how they had this secret that what Void Rivals was, Transformers and G.I. Joe in the same title, but they weren't telling anyone. Like it wasn't in the solicitation. It did not say that. It did not say like, this is a big crossover for the first time ever. You're going to see these two big things crossover. They wanted to keep it secret. Robert Kirkman, God bless him, man. That guy loves a secret drop, and I love that about him. Anyway, so what they did was they let this go for a while, and then they created these. They basically said to retailers, as any way they could get them, hey, show up on this day. We're going to have a Zoom call. We have a big reveal. Do not tell anyone. If you tell anyone, you're going to ruin the surprise. And retailers policed each other. Like when somebody on an online forum would hint about it, you would see like all of these retailers come in and go, we're not talking about that yet. It was incredible. It was incredible. I've never seen anything like it in my years of doing this. Anyway, but they did all of that because they knew that they were going to take people by surprise, and that they weren't going, like Ultimate Spider-Man, they weren't going to have enough copies in stock. And the cycle is fast, right? It is pretty fast for a restock. You can get things turned around in a few days, but that's a few days where you're going to miss the sale many times. Like, if you don't get that sale on that Wednesday, you're probably not going to get it, right? So, so I will tell you that when I was a retailer, my goal was always to have, on anything that I was selling more than say 20 copies of, my goal was to order one more copy than I could sell, right? And that because I wanted to know where the ceiling was at all times. Never got that right. Never ever got that right. So I'm either losing sales because I don't have enough copies, or I'm losing profit because I have too many. There's no other example. Jim Hanley, we're all in New York. Jim Hanley's Universe is a legend here in this area. Jim Hanley famously said in our circles, I know two ways to order comics: too many and too few. Those are the only choices. And he's right. That is what the retailer is struggling with every single week. They're gambling every single week. They're sitting down at the sports book and deciding how many copies to order. So trying to communicate to them, how many they should order is an ongoing challenge for marketers in this space. And once again, reiterates the job of the consumer, if they have a responsibility here, is to pre-order. Because it's, when you want it, you can't just say, oh, wait and see what it looks like on the shelf, because it may not make it to the shelf.
And I think it's also hard to gauge, like yes, you'll see your pre-orders, but there's also, I think, a level of gauging the conversation around it. And if there is that community that you have, the basis of community to have a conversation, to be able to pull sentiment out, and to be able to say, okay, cross-reference that with the number of pre-orders, then you can even better refine for like behavioral things, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, cool, not only is this going to sell, but is it because it's Spider-Man and everybody who is picking up Spider-Man will pick up Spider-Man, and therefore I can better gauge that? Or is it something like a Void Virals, hey, there's some buzz, there's some excitement, but if only you were to know the surprise, then you can start to extrapolate that for the next issue, for the third, for the fourth.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you want to talk about math. Like if you're ever a kid and you're in school and you're like, when am I ever going to use this algebra? Don't become a comic book retailer, my friend.
Right now, yeah.
Because you are going to be doing that every day. Yeah,
we have I started a pals tracker, just to see like how we feel about books, 3 inputs, pull, pass, pick of the week.
Oh yeah.
And but from there, the the idea of having the community also talk to it. We run polls for each of those previews. I haven't told the guys yet, but I've started to input that as like to compare what the fans like what the listener sentiment is in relation to our own books. Start to create pies, charts. You're speaking my language, dude.
Yeah,
I love this shit.
this is why
I
Marco's
would
on the
love
show. We give him software updates every Tuesday to coincide with Windows updates. It's
That's right.
perfect. Yeah.
Oh man, I'd love to as we begin to do this FCR ranking every week, I'd love to maybe sometime I should come back on the show. We can compare, the rankings to see how they line up. That would be really interesting to see.
Very small sample sizes, in the
Yeah,
tens, but
DC
still.
leaning for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Adam, one thing I can tell you is you are absolutely always welcome back. This has been a
Well, this has been
fascinating-
really fun. I just realized we've been going for almost 2 hours. Yeah.
and we've got a lot more show to do. You are not locked in here the way we are, but
All right.
we do have a lot more show to do. I want to hit a couple more super chats.
Sure.
Flo Dameron with the 4.99 says recently DC had some ads on the subway, which was cool. Great discussion. Thank you, Flo.
Yeah.
Just to that, I spoke a little bit about that because I did see those, and in one of my newsletters talked about the MTA marketing campaigns of like their public safety and their usage of comics or cartoons. So
Yeah. I work a lot with Fred Van Lente. In fact, I just had drinks with him last night. I love that guy. He did a lot of stuff with the Department of Education in the city of New York.
Wow.
He's been really involved in a lot of I don't remember what actually those books were that he was working on, but yeah. Anyway, we'll see, man. Funding is weird. Any government agency right this second is up for grabs. So who the fuck knows, what's going on there.
Julia Raul with the 5 spot. Thanks, Julia. Says, can the Comics Pals sell me on Absolute Wonder Woman and Flash? Well, Julia, this conversation is different from that. But what I will say is that if you are tired of the presentation of those characters in the mainline DC space, what you're getting is something that is different but still feels unique and pure and true to those characters' identities. So Absolute Wonder Woman feels like Wonder Woman. She doesn't feel like it's not like Injustice where those characters sort of feel like really really alternate different takes that go to extreme places. I feel like Absolute Wonder Woman and Flash very much feel like they're in the spirit of those characters, but there are some differences and some things that I think make them more interesting, almost like they were created today.
It's breaking the characters down to their core elements and rebuilding them up. And I think it's a way that really keeps the spirit of those characters there. And it's not, I know Julia always talks about like the darkness of books. It's not that. I wouldn't worry about that. It's still a little brutal at some points, but it's not grim dark like you'd expect.
Yeah.
A lot of gnashing of teeth. You guys we're all here in New York. I don't know if you know Anyone Comics here in Brooklyn.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that shop. In fact, for the first few years of Piranha, I had an office in their basement, and so I was in there every day. But they've since moved, and they no longer have a basement. It's sad. But
they don't have the basement.
yeah.
Oh.
They're like right around the corner. I went. That's where I picked up the this thing. The Demetrios and Tom were selling it. I'm just like, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Right on. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, so Demetrius, I was just having a conversation with him. For research, I had him. I had to buy a bunch of books, and I said I can't make it to the store. And he goes, "I'll just bring them to you." Wonderful. I love that guy. Anyway, I bought a bunch of the compacts, and because I wanted to understand the format for a project that we're working on. Anyway, all this to say, so I was talking to Demetrius and like, how buddy, how are sales, right? And he was basically saying businesses, we're talking about his business overall, and what he said was sales were really good, back to our original conversation. And he said that there's right this second, there's more. Again, I mentioned this, I didn't say who it was, high schoolers coming in for the first time and like setting up pull boxes and coming in on a weekly basis. And he said it's because they feel like this is their version of DC. This is their version of Marvel. And, knowing some of the things that are happening, that are coming down the pike, and I won't ruin anybody's surprises, especially for DC and how how that's going to play out. It'll be really interesting to see how those consumers begin to get involved in the rest of comics. Like, are we just going to have them as, absolute and ultimate fans? Or are they just going to be, are they become, yeah, we'll see. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see.
Just to that, I've had that same thought of if they stay isolated, and as the rubber band of comics is, you return back and you go back to just the main line. You kind of, maybe this was a great arc, or this was a great story for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Do we lose the influx of people? Because there's a lot of people even in our community who just say, yeah, I'm just picking up all absolute, all ultimate.
Yeah, and that, I mean, but some of them will hang out, right?
Sure.
Listen, I'm sure that if you take if you were able to document everybody who bought a death in the family, from when they killed Robin, they bought that story arc and got really involved in comics during that period, and how many of them ended up working in comics and having their own podcast and having shit like this on the walls. I'm sure it's a narrow field of one, but I'm also sure that there was still, during that period, I wasn't the only one that was falling in love with comics, right? I wasn't the only one that was reading this stuff that was really great, that I thought was, really great, but it had been out for 15 years, right? I'm sure I wasn't the only one. So we're always going to have, like, this influx, and then some of them will stay. There will be a core. We're gonna take that slag and melt it down into ore, So yeah, it'll happen.
I can't get enough of this conversation. I wish we could sit here literally all day and
I'm
talk.
really Yeah, I'm realizing
Every
I should probably bring it in, but yeah.
everything you say is like, oh, we could go down different trees and it could just be all day.
Yeah.
Jeremy Kulo is the last super chat we have at the moment with $5. Thank you, Jeremy, so much. Says one of the dumbest decisions in the last 5 years was DC giving up on DC fandom. What do you think about that? I love DC fandom. I thought it was cool.
The DC fandom?
Yeah, remember the event that they were doing during
Oh,
COVID,
yeah.
where they
Yeah. Let's see. How do I address what I know about that without, like, getting in too deep in the weeds and getting people distracted? There was a period at, anytime you see a changing of the guard, right? There are ideas that are in play that are never going to see the light of day, right? And that's just the way it is. Because, I mean, if I ever got, like, if I get a knock on the door and someone says, Adam Freeman, we need you to be the EIC of DC Comics, I'm gonna go, no, but I'll, sure. The last thing I'm going to do is go to Marie Javins and say, tell me all the things that you've been doing that I should carry on. I'm probably not. I'm probably going to use that opportunity to go back to the things that I like, to bring the stories that I like. So unfortunately, that means that there may have been some shit that Marie is working on that it would never see the light of day, or even that she even just got off the ground. Right.
5G.
5G. Right. All right. So I'm going to tell you, I don't know if I can't really share it, but I'm going to talk about it. I had Dan DiDio on my podcast, and it was an incredible conversation. He's a wonderful interview if you get a chance. But he, later I was doing this panel, which I'm redoing at C2E2, called From Script to Shelf. Essentially all of the steps that a comic takes from the moment that we decide we're going to make this line of books. We're going to decide that we're going to do the ultimate line of books, right? What is the moment from there all the way to when it reaches your shelf? What are the operational things that have to happen? And so I was putting this together, and I had a lot of really people I thought were great, like superstars that most people don't care about. Like the guy who, his job is to obsess over paper and printing at DC. I had him on the panel. And I'll tell you, when somebody asked him about tariffs, and he goes, well, here's all the things that we're thinking about and how we're adjusting for this. And I'm a nerd for this shit, and I didn't understand half of what he was saying. I'm like, all right, somebody serious is thinking seriously about this. I'm not worried anymore. Anyway, So I'm building this thing, and I reached out to a few people because I wanted a whiteboard. Like when you have like a writer's retreat, or any or sort of creative retreat. In the old days, you would just get everybody in a room, in a conference room, and there's a big whiteboard, and you just write down how this thing is going to go. And so I was looking for images of whiteboards. And so I said to Dan, do you have one of those, like an image of, one of your big launches? Because I'd love to have that. And, you can see what was planned and what wasn't, and which roads they didn't go down, and that sort of thing. I think that I have a bunch of that from Valiant. I love it. But so I sent it to him. He goes, well, no, but here's two that didn't happen. And so I have two whiteboards of events that never happened because they were planned for him. Like, zero, the audience that is interested in this is like probably the four of us, and that's it, but like that's what I'm talking about, is that I don't even remember where how I started telling this cool story.
It was the fandom idea of,
Oh yeah, so fandom. Right. So I think that was just a change in the guard, really. Dan stepped away. They brought Marie in. A lot of the stuff that he was setting up was going to be, a focus on how do we get new audience in? How do we bring in new eyeballs? And, and she had different mandates. She had different things that she had to do. And so there's going to be a shift. I think that's probably what happened. I don't have any insider info on that, but that's just my guess.
There were still Snickers bars and Crunch bars with Yara Flor and all of the 5G heroes on the candy bars when Marie Javins was doing stuff at DC already.
Yeah, exactly. Because those things take months, years to put together. It's gonna take a while to cycle that through. So yeah.
I also wanted to make sure that I said thank you to Hayden's Hideout, who joined our Patreon and paid up a year. So thank you. Huge shout out to you, Hayden,
Damn.
for joining the Pals verse. Appreciate you. You've got your origin impending. We've got a few origins to get done. So you guys
Origins,
have a
what
lot
is
to look
that?
forward to. Okay, so what we do is you heard the shout outs I did earlier. We
Yeah,
come up with like a superhero or supervillain nickname, and then we'll write like an origin for their character. So whether it's me or Marco, we'll write that, and then that's who they are. That's their identity in the Palsverse.
that's what the alliterative, like, Dynamo Dan,
Yep.
yeah, awesome.
Adam Freeman.
Oh, there you go. That's boy, there's a story too there. We're not going to tell that today.
That's over drinks. That's over drinks.
That's right.
So we've got a lot more show to do. Adam,
Yeah.
you have been incredible. Such an incredible guest. I wish you could see the comment section. People
I know.
are so happy.
I'm gonna go back and look. I'm gonna go in and I'll try and if there are any questions we didn't get to, and I happy to read it.
There are a lot of really smart people making comments. So many comments I wish we could get to, but I don't want to hold you. So if you've got life to live, you are free to go do that. But again, this has been incredible. So it's up to you.
Well, listen, I anytime I have access to a bunch of people in comics, I cannot, I'm a sales guy first, so I got to give my shout outs, right? So
Please.
Let's start with some clients. Let's start with Recca Comics. They are the people that came out of the cybersecurity folks. We are doing a book called The Future Is. And the future is many, many things. We're going to talk about what those are. It's on pre-order right now. Any shop that has a Lunar account can go ahead and place pre-orders with it. We're going to have it out on May 14th. It's a single issue series. It's going to go for 5 years. 60 monthly issues we are planning for this title. Wow. So yeah, it's going to be really good. It's about hacking and cybersecurity, and well, I say it's about those things, but it's really not. What it is, it's a heist movie every month about these people who break in, and it's all set 30 years in the future. So we're going to see what future technology is going to look like and what we imagine hacking is going to look like in that future. It is written by Fred Van Lente. It is edited by Joe Keating. If you know him, Eisner Award-winning Joe Keating, the writer. By the way, he should come on this show. He would have a good time with him. He's a good, he's a good guest. Let's see. It's we've got Enio Buffy on the first run. We've got our cover. Issue 1 cover is Jay Lee, and it is awesome. and we have more coming from Jay Lee. That's what I can tell you. I won't give that piece away just yet. We'll have to pre-negotiate next time for some exclusives. That's what we're going to have to talk about. We have an incredible lineup of cover artists. There's only going to be one cover per issue. And my favorite piece about this story is not only the story itself, incredibly engaging and super fun and really well done, or as well done as we can do, because I'm going to go over it every last detail of it. It's also got these things that are called capture the flags puzzles, right? They're called CTFs in the cyber community. They give each other these puzzles to basically teach you new cybersecurity, different hacking, understanding how things work behind the scenes. If you understand it better, you can solve these puzzles. It's a tradition inside of the cybersecurity community, and we're bringing that to the future is and all the Rekka comics that we're doing. It's really super fun once you get started getting involved in it, but you don't even have to. There are going to be these puzzles embedded in nearly every page of the book that you can follow down that path, or you can get to know hacking through it. And if you know hacking, man, these guys get paid really, really well. So anyway, so that's coming out in May. You should be pre-ordering for that every month. Actually, I think I've lined this up so that they're actually going to both come out in the second week of every month. I just realized how smart I am there. We also have ZCN, Zdarsky Comic News. That's a promotional book that goes out into stores every month with Chip Zdarsky's voice. He legitimately writes and or designs nearly every page of that thing every month. And it's now we've gone up to 16 pages every month, and we're about to boost the bundle size up to 25 copies. It's really cheap for the retailer. It's like 10 cents a piece for the retailer so that they can give it to you for free. Or if they want to charge you 50 cents or $1, you should pay them because we need them. Okay, just pay them. All right. So anyway, ZCN, pick that up every month and advertise in it. If you're trying to sell something in comics, call me. We'll get you an ad. All right. Those are the big ones. The other two are my once again, my newsletter. We're really focusing on calling the Prana Bullet. The idea is to create something that if you're at the end of the week, you don't know if you hit all the big story notes, or you want to just see what the ranking is for the fan confidence rating, the FCR, just open it up once a week, and it's going to be skimmable. That's my goal, is to make it, you don't have to sit down and read it. It's not homework. So sign up for that. And then Comic Industry Insiders. We do a monthly long form interview where we dig into just this sort of stuff. If you've listened to me talk for 2 hours about this shit, you should be subscribing, because this is all I do. I talk to people about people behind the scenes in the comic book industry about how it is that how they built their careers, how they built their businesses, and giving you the tips and tricks that you need in order to build your own career or business in comics. That comes out weekly. And we're also, here we go. I'm giving you this exclusive. We're taking Comic Industry Insiders live, and we're making it once a week.
There you go.
It's going to be Tuesday afternoon. It's during the business day so that you can listen to it while you're at work or while you're filtering your comics, while you're setting up your subscribers. And we're going to be doing basically this. We're going to be talking about the headlines once a week. It's going to be a really interesting time these next few months. That's part of the reason we went weekly, was we know that there's going to be changes every week, especially to distribution in the business of comics. So check that out. We're going to be on the Experience channel, but also on our own socials. So we're broadcasting it through the Facebook, the Prana DM Facebook page, and those sorts of places. So you'll be able to pick us up in lots of different places. So I think those are all the things that I'm supposed to be pitching. I'm sure as soon as this is out, some member of my team is going to say, "What about that other thing that you said we always going to talk about?" But whatever, I didn't do it.
Yeah, we've been sticking links into the chat the entire time.
Yes,
got me an opportunity to put up this image of Chip Zdarsky wooing a Batman version of Chip Zdarsky on the CZN cover.
That's such a good cover. You guys should watch, if you haven't already. He did a presentation at YouTube, Comics Pro, where he it was hysterically funny. He only had like 5 minutes or something to talk to the retailers, and he gets up there and he says, "I do this. I also write Captain America, and I do it, and people say, how do I do this? And the answer is, well, this year my wife and I decided that we were going to become polyamorous and start dating other people, and it's going much better for her than it is for me. And so he like intersperses his conversation about polyamory with pitching ZCN. And so he would get into, and ZCN, we're talking about comics every week, and I do these infographics and I do this. And let me tell you the story about this woman I met at a bar. And she said, what do you do? And I said, I write Batman. I have to say it, even though I don't write Batman anymore. And she goes, oh, do you draw it? And he goes, no, I don't. And then he says, and please don't Google the artist, because then there's a big picture of Jorge, who is just this god of a man. I'm sorry, I'm giving away the punchline. You guys should totally watch it. His timing is so much better than mine. But yes,
No, Chip's the best.
he's wonderful to work with. I love working with that guy. Cool.
You mentioned ads in the ZCN. Can we get a Comics Pals ad in there? Can we talk about that?
Oh,
You
dude,
are goddamn right we can. And I'm giving you a
Yes.
discount. I'm telling you right now, I'm getting you a discount on this Comics Pal, because you've been, you've had given me such a great Saturday afternoon so far already.
Thank you. And that is something we will definitely be reaching out about, because we would love to, expand our profile. And
Also, my marketing friend, I'm telling you, there's some people outside of comics who need some ads. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, let me know. Hook me up. I'm happy to have conversations.
Let's get it going. Awesome.
all right,
All right.
so we're gonna let you go, Adam. Thank you so much for joining us today. You've
Thank
been an
y'all.
incredible guest. We will absolutely speak again. Thank you.
Absolutely. This has been super fun, and not at all a waste of a Saturday afternoon. I cannot wait. Even though it is beautiful outside, I'm looking forward to going out into it. So
Oh yeah.
thanks, y'all. Have
Take
a great
care.
one.
Thanks so much.
Namaste.
care. Our show is far from over. We've got a lot more to talk about. Adam was a phenomenal guest. You guys heard all the plugs. Make sure that you click those links that are in the chat right now. Let's show Adam some Comics Pals love. You guys have been great all day so far. The engagement in the chat. Sorry we weren't able to get to more of your comments and questions, but Adam has a lot to say. We have a lot to say, so it's always a little tough. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that talk.
Hayden's hideout saying spend those comics bucks. It's the gears are going.
The gears are this turning.
Yes, those bucks are going to get spent. That's a damn fact.
Man, I appreciate. God, I appreciate the numbers aspect of all
Yeah, you
of this.
nerd.
The just like, cause I think that's where like the value of understanding for the business is, right? Like, so that part of it was phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily ever get to hear about. Like, do people know how important a pre-order is? Do people understand why shops rely on subscriptions from people, or why it's so hard to get a book that you didn't pre-order? These are the realities.
And I just love the nuanced discussion of like, the comic industry is not dying. It's changing, and it's actually probably pretty good for where it's at. Like the fact that, comic shops close all the time is something you see on headlines on a completely cool article or a YouTube channel that I don't watch. But the actual number of comic shops not really changing, it was fascinating to me. That was a stat that I didn't even know about. And Adam, right out of the gate came out with that.
It's because shops close, but
some
shops
open.
also open.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that nuanced discussion is something that's lost in the YouTube space, because it's so much easier to say, like, oh, comics are dying because Spider-Man's bad, or women are editing them, like there people can just say that instead of looking at like, oh, there are just so much more to just big two comics when you talk about the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
I disagree with the only thing Adam said that I disagree with is that those other YouTubers are good faith. They're not good faith. That they're not, and they aren't evaluating things from a basis of like truth. I can think of channels. I'm sure everybody can think of channels that, they probably have a lot more subscribers than us. There's a channel I'm thinking about in particular right now that somebody mentioned in the chat, but every video is some negative bullshit about the industry. So you're helping. You think the industry is in trouble, you're helping advance that. by only feeding into that. And yeah, you have a lot more subscribers than us because of it, but you're harming this thing that you claim to love, and that's how I know you don't love it.
It's a sales tactic though, because then they can say if that's dying, it's not dying in my book that I'm putting out. Buy it.
Exactly.
The
Which-
person I'm thinking of doesn't have a comic.
Okay.
Well then, well,
There's just straight up a lot of channels that do this. There are a lot of people. I mean, there's money to be made. You don't even need to have a comic to put out to make money talking shit.
yeah.
Unfortunately. But we've got a lot more show to get to, and one of the things that we have to get to is our top 5 Bendis written characters. We're gonna do our number 1. This is Bendis month. We have been talking about Bendis at length over the last few weeks. In fact, this Tuesday we're gonna be talking about Bendis's turn on Alias, his Jessica Jones focus series. We're going to do all 28 issues of that this Tuesday for the book club. That's what you guys voted on. That's what the patrons voted on. So we will be talking about. I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. But today, let's talk about our number 1 Bendis written character.
I missed last week's. Can I do my 3 in that case?
You're gonna have to.
Go for it.
And it has changed, especially since reading Alias. At my number 3, I had as Callista, also in Powers, but I think I'm moving it down. I'm moving Christian Walker down from Powers, one of the leads there, police detective. My number 2 is gonna be Jessica Jones. I've, not to give too much away, been having a lot of fun reading this book, and I'm very excited to talk about this on Tuesday. So we'll dig into more about that characterization and the way that it gets portrayed, because I think Bendis does a lot of really smart things. And my number 1 best and favorite Bendis written character is Dina Pilgrim from also from Powers. She's the cop. Only because I feel like she has a longer and more turbulent trajectory and arc in Powers than does Christian. She has she's a rookie, perfect story for that. Has a rise, has a fall, diverts and gets her own powers, has a whole transformative experience with that, and it comes to terms with what that means with Christian sort of alongside her. So she's one of my favorite characters, one of and for Bendis, one of my favorites that he's written because of the longevity of that character and her direction.
Marco, how many of your characters were Powers characters?
Tyler, what's your number 1?
I've never read Powers, so like this is like interesting to me because this is
It
not
was
something
I had 3. It was gonna be 4. I had 3.
My number 1 is Jessica Jones, and reading Alias is only confirming that, really. My love for Jessica Jones, honestly, I had not read Alias outside of Bendis's Jessica Jones book, which was after Alias, and Kelly Thompson's stuff, but that's irrelevant to discussion here. Just as a character throughout all of his Marvel stuff, she was ever present in like the Avengers stuff. Luke Cage leading the Avengers at a certain point, she was integral to that. I know people shit on it, but she's part of his Defenders run, and I think that Bendis just has an understanding of who that character is. He essentially remade the character. He made the character who she is. Other writers have had chances with that character since then, but Bendis really is the father of Jessica Jones in a way, and I think
he created her.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like in terms of who she is in the Marvel universe, like it's still mostly been Bendis that's written her. She's shown up here and there with the Kelly Thompson run that was great. But even then, I don't know why there isn't a Jessica Jones book right now. Like I think she's just a great character, and the TV show leaned into that Alias stuff, which I also thought was great. I like, when I think of Bendis, I think of Jessica Jones. Like they're synonymous to me. So I think there was no option for my number 1. And it's funny, like this was my number 1 even before I started reading Alias for the show, which there have been people wondering how are they going to read this? Comixology Unlimited has it if you have a subscription. That's probably the cheapest way of getting it quickly, because I know printing has been iffy on it, and it's not on Marvel Unlimited. So that's how I would recommend it if you're looking to catch up for Tuesday.
Yeah, that's free for the subscriber, or discounted if you want to buy
It's
it.
free for something you're paying for. Yeah.
Well, you know.
My number one is Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Ultimate Spider-Man is to me it's essential reading. I started comics in earnest with Ultimate Spider-Man and New Avengers, and Peter's on both. But I am saying Ultimate Spider-Man because you know, you talk about somebody's baby. Bendis created that version of the character and made that version of the character alongside Mark Bagley into a character that was people's way back into comics. It was their way back into this thing that they love, but it was also a lot of people's introduction into comics and this thing that they love. And for a lot of us, you know, this was mainline Peter was married. Mainline Peter was married to MJ. He was an adult. He had his whole life figured out the way as much as Peter possibly can. And so that's not necessarily for kids. But Ultimate Spider-Man was a high schooler with high schooler age problems and a girlfriend and all these different kinds of things, the same kinds of things that made Spider-Man the most popular character in comics decades prior. And so uh, I think for Bendis to be able to pull that off, especially at a time where comics were so weak, Ultimate Spider-Man is a book that you can pin the resurrection of comics on in a lot of ways, and that can't be overstated. So to me, from we saw Ultimate Spider-Man from the beginning of his career to his death. He got a full story, one of the only comic book characters I can think of that has a full complete story. That's a beautiful thing. You can read his whole life. In fact, fun fact, the original Ultimate Spider-Man's time as Spider-Man is shorter than the current Ultimate Spider-Man's time as Spider-Man in real time, like in comics time.
Are you talking about Miles?
No, I'm
Or
talking about Peter. Like Peter's time, Ultimate Peter's time as Spider-Man
sure.
was shorter in comics time than the current Ultimate Spider-Man because all the things that happened in his
monthly.
life happened over the course of about a year. Whereas
Wow. Okay.
this iteration, we've already been past a year.
Oh, really? Oh, I did not know that. Oh, wow.
That's that decompressed Bendis storytelling there for you.
Yep. And we'll get Cale's next week, and we will wrap things up with Bendis. But
Near says bro died at like 15.
yes, very funny.
I think he came back too, right? Didn't he come back before the incursions?
Yeah, he came back. I don't really even remember what happened with that,
Yeah.
to be honest, but yeah. Um Dan Trudeau says, as much as I love Miles, Ultimate Peter dying like he did is still depressing to me. Yeah, that was well done. Excellently done. All right. Let's get into the news. We already talked earlier about Todd McFarlane potentially buying Diamond. There's not really anything more to say about that. We'll find out on Monday. Monday is when the auction is.
Oh, is it Monday? Damn.
Yeah. So we will find out on Monday. We're going to skip that though, and we're going to talk about Battle Beast. We talk about comics sales and how important pre-orders are. Battle Beast has sold to the tune of about 400K. Now, that is sell in. For those of you who were paying attention earlier, sell in means sales to stores. So about 400K. That topples Absolute Batman's original pre-order numbers. Um, it's I think higher than TMNT as well.
I believe so, yeah.
Uh, it's competitive with Batman 158, Hush 2, number 1. So huge congrats to Robert Kirkman and Ryan Otley for that. This book is going to be huge, and it's a testament to their ability, Skybound's ability in particular, to reach out to retailers, make them understand when something is hot and worth pre-ordering, and getting them on the hook for these books.
I commend Skybound constantly for their relationships with comic shops. You know,
Yeah.
every comic shop retailer that I've spoken to or I've heard speaks highly of Skybound. You know, they helped with Void Rivals. You know, there was that Die 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 when that came out from Kirkman. That was like a sudden drop, way back when, and I think that combined with the heat that Invincible has right now, just as a property, is huge. Like season 3 just finished, so this will be coming out like a month after season 3 finishes. Like Invincible is big. I have friends who don't read comics who watch Invincible, and they're like, "Why aren't you watching?" It's a property at this point. So striking while the iron's hot is something Skybound is so damn good at that other companies can't seem to do, and they're doing that with Battle Beast. Battle Beast is the most toyetic character in the Invincible universe. Like, it's perfect, and having Kirkman and Otley back for that, it's great. I like the Invincible universe right above Battle Beast because that just reeks of there'll be more. We're gonna see more. I wouldn't see. I'd be surprised if we see. Was it Alan the Alien down the line or something? I never read Invincible, so I don't even know if he's still alive. But all these different characters you can expand upon and do stuff with.
Yeah. It's smart. It's a smart play, and I think you're right to the relationship aspect. Like, um, they're the ones that have granted us access even like at Comic Cons and stuff, right? Like they care to get this information out to the public, and it's really exciting to see how for a publisher like Skybound, these are the levels of pre-orders you're getting. There is such they're on par now from a volume standpoint for some of these pre-orders with a Batman, with a Spider-Man. Who would have thought that 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, like there's a current series of quests you can do in Fortnite to unlock a duplicate as a skin in Fortnite, the biggest video game in the world right now. Like that is just how on the ball Skybound is in terms of timing, in terms of marketing. That it makes sense that Battle Beast would only be selling this much. Like they've earned it, really.
Yeah, and in the Bleeding Pool article, Rich talks a lot about the relationship with um with retailers that Kirkman has been able to establish, and some of the things that um had they been doing to get this book over. Now, one of the things that they have done is there are 15 different covers that have been revealed right now. And then there's a blind bag that they're offering, which comes with a random cover that could be a very, very rare cover for this book. And so, yeah, there is that aspect of it where they're doing the cover thing. There's a ton of covers out for this, but that's the industry, that's the game. And so you can't really blame them for it. I love this. This is boots to ground, um, selling comics. Real shit. No gimmicks outside of the variants. They're not doing any other gimmicky stuff to get this book um, to sell.
I definitely want to do the blind bag one. I
Same.
think Marvel did it with the Fantastic Four Death of Human Torch issue. If you remember that, and I got lucky. I got the Kirkman signed. I mean the Hickman signed issue. That like it. There was only I think 100 of these.
Is that slabbed?
It's in a frame. It's not slabbed yet. But
Oh,
yeah. I don't know how slabbing would work because it's signed, but this is the only way you can get this cover, so it has to be verified. And it came
Oh.
signed, so I don't know how that would work.
Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Put it in
Well,
a plastic
yeah,
bag.
it is on my list of to get slabbed. But
Yo.
I love shit like that. Think about like Pokemon card pack openings on TikTok. Imagine a blind bag opening for variants for like comic book TikTokers. Like I think that's a smart thing to do. Sell for $1 extra, or maybe $2 extra, but have the ability to maybe make the money back. People love gambling with these, blind bag things and card pack openings. I'm surprised more people don't do this, to be honest.
Yeah, this is pretty cool, and you can't deny the relationship between the television show and the comics. This is not something that you can easily replicate, but the fact of the matter is that Invincible is as big as it is because of that show. Um, and Robert Kirkman does it again. So, another lesson to learn from the master. If you have the ability to make a book big enough and you can get it, not even a live action, an animated series going, that's the way. That is the way. We've got a lot of comments. We haven't heard from you guys in a while because we've been in our own world. Musa Rizik says Battle Beast is one of the coolest characters in the Invincible show.
God damn, I slept on that thing. I watched the first season, really good stuff, but I haven't caught up. And outside of the like maybe 3/4 of the compendium, I haven't gone to get the second one either. It's fun, but I haven't been like pulled to get more.
Man, I wish there was an action figure for this. Like, I know Skybound works with, I think, McFarlane to put out action figures, but man, there's no battle piece. That's a shame,
I'm shocked by that.
right?
That seems like something they'll have to get to now, especially.
Hayden's Hideout. Do you think Invincible season 3 has helped this book in any way? For sure. I mean,
Of course.
just the awareness of it, the timing. Yeah.
Dan Trudeau says, I don't think anyone's been as plugged in as Kirkman since Stanley's peak years. That's 1000% accurate. Like,
Hmm.
it's crazy how tuned in Robert is. And he's been like this for decades. And if you haven't seen that manifesto, a lot of people haven't seen it. I don't even know if it's still available anymore. But Robert Kirkman put out an indie creator manifesto in the 2000s that was basically just like, here's how you do this, and it's brilliant. He had a debate. Who was his debate with? Was it Bendis? Might have been Bendis. It was incredible. So insightful and interesting. Um, lots of Robert Kirkman is the man, and one day I hope we can get him on here to talk about his legendary career.
Do you think he's that next? No one's going to be Stanley. No one's going to be that level. But do you think he's the closest we currently have to being a spokesperson for comics outside of the sphere of comics?
I think so. I wish he would talk more. I don't think he
Sure.
talks enough.
Yep.
I don't think anybody talks enough. But yeah, I would agree with that. And if he worked for Marvel or DC and had that same, like, he's the kind of guy when he retires from writing, I really hope he takes a larger position, even if it's just at Skybound, because nobody else is showing the kind of initiative that he shows to be able to sell comics to retailers.
And Skybound includes Energon. Like, that's how big it is. Yeah.
Right.
And they've been
Yeah.
great with us too in terms of communicating. Like, the people at Skybound are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So congratulations on that. We will definitely be reading Battle Beast when it comes out. I'm excited for that. Let's talk a little Marvel. So, Exceptional X-Men is going to be getting at least 10 issues. We know, well, more than 10 issues, excuse me. We know that X-Force was canceled, so that's going away.
Oof.
And there was another book that was canceled as well.
NYX.
NYX was
Yep.
canceled
Oh,
as well.
damn.
Thank you. And so Tom Brevoort, who when he talks, it is via his Substack largely. He is, of course, an executive editor at Marvel for over 20 years. He talked about this, and he talked about people's concerns about books being canceled and stuff like that. So this is what he had to say. I think that people who feel like Exceptional X-Men is too slow paced are missing the point. That isn't some failing. That's what the book is. Part of its identity. Beyond that, there's going to be an Exceptional X-Men 11 and 12, and that will continue on for as long as there's sufficient readership to support for the title from the audience. But these days, especially, no title and no run continue on indefinitely. So things will inevitably change sooner or later. But worrying about tomorrow can prevent you from enjoying today. So if you're liking the series, I'd advise you to just sit back and relax and not worry about it. I think this is an instance where your fear of the future prevents you from enjoying the present. And if 10 issues isn't long enough for you to feel comfortable, how many would? 11, 15, 20? The truth of the matter is that most series that are launched these days are not going to command enough of the audience to reach those digits. We can pretend that the situation is otherwise, but it simply isn't so. So the only advice I can give you is to pick up whatever series appeal to you and don't worry so much about 6 months from now or whatever.
Sean, as a World of Warcraft head or an ex World of Warcraft head, do you remember when Blizzard, I think it was the CEO at the time, said, "You think you want it, but you don't." In regards to like a classic version, where it's this reeks of that of somebody at the company, almost like gaslight. It feels gaslighty, is what I'm trying to say. In the way it's described, like he's just saying, like, just enjoy what you can. Who cares if it's 12 issues or whatever? Who cares about the dozens of people that request long series that they can enjoy for a certain amount of time? I don't like this messaging. This feels reductive to people's opinions.
Wants.
Yeah, it because I think the fan outcry for something like this does come from a place of passion, and this feels reductive to that. I think there is a way to talk about this from a publishing standpoint that's a little more cold, but I think would make more sense. This feels like enjoy what you have, consume what we make, and I don't really like the wording here.
Well, this is that cold publisher message. Like it doesn't feel sympathetic, and I understand that the point he's making is accurate, right?
Yeah.
But
Sure, yeah.
But the communication of that to fans, to readership, that left a bad taste in my mouth. That feels like it is what it is, and it feels like bad customer service. It is what it is. This is what you're getting. Be happy for it, to your point, but also uh, uh, we're justifying the tone because, well, I can't sell books.
But it's also like people would be okay with this if it was messaged early on. Like, we didn't know NYX was ending at issue 10 until the solicitation for issue 10 came out. And the team said, yeah, this was the plan. Like, they had known that. But it's like they can't say that because then sales drop because Marvel's so afraid of the idea of marketing a miniseries or marketing a maxi series.
And they were explicitly saying these will be in 10 issue chunks. That part they've communicated, but you're right that they haven't said, there hasn't been earlier communication about whether or not that would continue. I think at an issue 5, but you have to have that transparency. You have to be comfortable with that transparency. At issue 5, this will end at 10 if even the writers or in this case Tom knew.
Do you remember when covers would say 1 of 12, 1 of 10?
I really disagree with you guys. I don't think that saying. I think if you say the book is ending, people are going to stop buying it, and it also eliminates the possibility of sales shifting and it becoming an ongoing. Like, I don't think that NYX would have been canceled if it was selling gangbusters. The same way that Poison Ivy was allowed to continue on when it was originally solicited as not an ongoing. They're leaving space for the idea of these books continuing. If Exceptional was selling at the same rate as NYX, it'd be on the chopping block too, the same way X-Force is. I think that, the business realities dictate that this book can't stay on the stands any longer, and it is what it is. And I think announcing that ahead of time when you don't know when you're basically killing the sales you're gonna get, is just shooting yourself in the foot.
But to your point in that example, Poison Ivy was solicited as this is only X issues, and it became a ongoing. I think that had it been okay and it's ending is a better narrative for the same reasons, sales or not, than this is. It had a lifespan of 10. That's how we were going to plot it out, but now it's coming in. Well, just enjoy what you have.
Because it's gone.
Well, yeah, I mean it is.
So what? So like, what's he supposed to say?
So
I think you should have communicated at the beginning. Then this is only going to be 10 issues, and we decide from that point on. Versus, we're doing 10 issue chunks, and not set an expectation for it not continuing down the road.
I think that's a little hard to solicit, but I do agree with the idea of that. Like, you can maxi series can extend. That's not out of the realm of possibility, and announcing that as much seems fine to me. Because then the idea, like, what is an ongoing then? the idea of an ongoing series changes, and you could say that's just the reality of the state of comics right now. Which, yeah, probably
It is.
yeah.
But that's exactly it. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with this. The idea of an ongoing has shifted. What Tom is saying is that you can't have the expectation that the book you are reading is going to necessarily make it past 10 issues. And so you would have to say that about almost every series that comes out. And they're not going to do that. That would make no sense whatsoever. They're just not going to say every book is 1 through 10 unless it sells better. That's crazy. But whether you know it or not, and whether everybody else knows it or not, every book has that. Every book is on that. If a book can't sell, it's not making it past 10 issues. It might not even make it past 5.
But from the point of communication, do you feel it? Let's say with respect to changing of artist, do you feel that better when there's an expectation set for you as the reader and consumer that after 10 issues an artist will change, or the solicitation happens, it's a subpar or somebody you don't like on said book?
I think it's
From a communication standpoint.
I think that's separate than what we're talking about. You're talking about
that's-
creative team
No,
changes.
no. What I'm saying is the point of communication is transparency ahead of time, irrespective of the end outcome.
But you're asking for transparency way far in advance. You're saying that they should launch a series as 1 of 10 always, and then that series either gets more issues or doesn't based on sales, and you find that out, let's say 7 issues in, because that's when solicits would be coming out for the 10th, then you would say, oh, by the way, guys, this is being canceled with 10. Now, what you've essentially done is you've told everybody, hey, if you didn't start reading this already, don't bother. We're done. It's over. We're not going to continue this any longer. And you're setting that expectation for every single comic that gets produced.
There is a bit of you signaling people like here you can start waiting for the trade or Marvel Unlimited at this point. So yeah, I get it. Yeah, I mean, it's just a hard thing to market at this point, and I don't envy him, but I don't know, something rubbed me wrong about the phrasing of it all.
Like he said, how many issues would be enough for you to feel comfortable? 11, 15, 20? And I mean, look, I would love it if every book could get to that 30, 40, 50 marker, but that's not real. That's not a real thing. And what Tom is saying is, hey, your expectations might be off base for the reality of this industry. It's not up to you. It's up to us because we're the ones that have to sell this shit. And quite frankly, he could have taken it a step further and said, if you want the book to continue, buy it. That's it.
That should be something he talks about, though, for those books, for sure. Yeah. Because this is how often is this Substack? Weekly, monthly?
I think it's monthly.
Yeah.
And he said the truth of the matter is that most series that launch these days aren't going to command enough of the audience to reach those digits. We can pretend that the situation is otherwise, but it simply isn't. That's exactly it. So I know there was a lot of frustration based on what Tom said, but I just think he's telling the real. People have to accept where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you think with Marvel's, one of the comments we see a lot is that Marvel puts out so many damn books right now. Do you think they should, with the amount of money they have, Marvel as a company, Disney, be able to let books cook a little longer to put that risk in?
I mean, I every time this conversation comes up, I say the same thing. Marvel and Disney, they're not the same. The money that Disney has is not the same money that's allocated to Marvel. So we can never count their pockets, assuming that Disney's pockets are Marvel's. Therefore, my understanding is that Marvel doesn't have the money we think that they have, and they can't necessarily just float books the way we would like them to. And I would also add, by the way, they're probably floating books a lot more than we already realize. So
Yeah.
how much more rope can you possibly give?
Yeah. And I wonder if there's a way to like launch these in kind of like a staggered way so that NYX it got its run. Okay, cool, we'll get the next one to kind of float, right? Because then at the very least there You're putting out books, seeing what sticks, and then Exceptional X-Men is sticking around. Cool. Now we float in X Force. Okay, then X Factor, whatever it is. See how that does. Like I think the volume, yes, was probably the issue at the start. Is all at the gate. Get as much as you possibly can. Overwhelm, and then see what floats, what sticks around. I think was harder because at the start you're already distributing your dollars so harshly.
And one of the things I've seen, at least as a pattern in Marvel, is like, even though the book might be ended with 10 issues, they usually reuse the creative team, or like those creators are usually back for something else. Like look at how many Steve Orlando's Scarlet Witch books there have been. That is essentially one ongoing, but it's what, 4 series. So even though NYX ends at issue 10, Kelly and Lansing are doing that Miss Marvel event afterwards. So it's like, it's almost a little tricky. You almost have to follow creators to follow stories.
Jeremy Kulo says, I switched to wait to trade for trade on Power Girl for money reasons, along with a bunch of other titles, and the next month it got canceled. So like the incentive to keep the incentive of switching over for money reasons might be lost there, but then also it's like, damn, now do I want to finish the series up?
But even Power Girl, that almost had 30 issues. For a Power Girl series, that's big.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All by
That's
Leigh
pretty
Williams.
good.
And I think I enjoyed the book a lot.
Grayson Red says people need to stop acting like children and understand that money talks. If enough people don't buy it, then they simply can't keep making the comic. Simple. It is exactly that simple. It is exactly that simple. There's no money there, then that's it. There's nothing that they can do. Hayden's Hideout says if they mark a series as ending at 10, I think some fans would lose confidence in that title. Oh, this Gwenpool series is ending at 10, I'll just wait for the trade. And that's not great. Like if you are a trade waiter, that is amazing for you. But that doesn't actually help the state of floppies unless the trades are selling so well that it makes it worth keeping the floppies in print, even if they're not selling as great. Miss Marvel is a good example of that in the past, where the floppies didn't sell tremendously, but the graphic novel sold great because Miss Marvel was a character that appealed to young people. So people would buy the graphic novels wherever they would get them. But outside of uh, situations like that, the floppy sale is what dictates the book's existence. So you got to get there weekly if you want your book to exist. That's how it is. Hendrik Perry says following creators is the growing sentiment in video games. Legendary company losing value to the creative team. That's interesting.
Yeah, I do hear the discussion more based on like, oh, who are the developers? Oh, where are those people's teams from? Because so many publishers in video games, they disband or they get broken up because of money, and then those people go elsewhere, and that's how people follow them and go to those games.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I never even thought about that actually.
Electric says, when you like a title, you just want the safety that whatever you chanced on, you still have that thing to go back to. Which is it's true. Yeah, it's a fair point.
I see some people talking about, whether or not Marvel has confidence in these books and that this shows a lack of confidence. And to that, I would say, well, yeah, there's a lack of confidence, but it's not in the book. It's not like Marvel is saying, yeah, it's true, X Force sucks, right? Like we're gonna have to cancel it. Marvel doesn't think that. Marvel thinks X Force is great, or they wouldn't have published it in the first place. There's some reason why they published it, right? What they don't have confidence in is you buying it, and it's not like they're thinking you won't buy it. It's that you're not buying it.
Hmm.
Like you're factually not supporting it, right? This is all data driven. There's nothing speculative about any of this at all.
Did we read Entertain Me's $5?
No, go for it.
Thank you so much for the super chat. All the extended X books are canceled, basically. NYX, X Factor, and X Force, the solo ones and the ones with the X-Men label, X-Men Uncanny Exceptional continue. And that's fair, yeah. Those are like the marquee books. You have the X-Men on that, and then varying adjective, that's fair. And I'm glad that exceptional is one of those that is standing out, because that one is and continues to be really good, and a slow burn, which feels like, okay, there's planning here. There's some kind of foresight, versus some of the other X-Men titles that we've been seeing.
I mean, I think Joseph Wolf does have a good point, though, in terms of the Marvel side of things. If DC will let books go on much longer, Marvel will know it's selling bad and just relaunch constantly to get number ones to pop up the book.
But
Sorry, go ahead.
my question is, Joseph, how do you know that DC is letting the books go on longer than their sales justify? Do you have sales data to back up that statement?
I was
Like,
good.
how do you know that?
It also feels like they're more comfortable with the miniseries. Uh, the question is, I don't believe has been solicited as something longer. Adam Project, Challenges of the Unknown, like these have been meant to be smaller books, and they've told us that. We go in with that expectation.
Those books also exist with a specific point.
Yeah.
Like, they're not meant to be published in perpetuity, so they shouldn't be judged uh by the same category as like an NYX, for example, that really is just like it doesn't have a specific point. Like, it's just a book that exists.
We don't know that DC is good at making books go on longer. We know that DC is good at the marketing when a book does get to go on longer. So we know the positive side of that. And I think that skews our perception of things.
I also think people are just really high on DC right now.
That's true.
And we're willing to give DC every single bit of grace on the planet Earth. And it's like, they're a big publisher too. They've got problems too.
Um, Prem here says, with the sobering thought, I don't see the issue with the series getting canceled, TBH. You know what? Actually, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, like, it sucks, but it is what it is. There
Yeah.
have been series that I've enjoyed that have been canceled, and it's like, fuck, man. But what am I gonna do? I can't float that book by myself. So if people don't buy it, then I guess it just doesn't deserve to exist. It's the market. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Mark Waid. Mark Waid is going to tell the history of the DC universe, the new history of the DC universe, alongside a couple of pretty interesting names. He's going to be working with Jerry Ordway and Todd Knock, um, and he's going to basically do the new history of DC Comics. That's going to be starting off this summer with a 4-issue limited series. It's going to span, the 90-year history of DC Comics, and it's going to, we've had this kind of thing from DC before. So if you've ever seen their history of the DC universe or other history of the DC universe, it's going to have a similar vibe.
Damn, dude. They're just firing on all cylinders. I'm locked in. Am I gonna eat this up? Yeah. They got who on this? Mark Waid, Somni. They got some promotional art there. Another cover with Dan Moore variants. Yeah, you're putting your superstars on these books to tell a history about the company that you've just fallen in love with. Okay.
Yeah, sounds about white for me.
Duh.
This just makes me want. I mean, I'm excited for this. I will say that Mark Waid killing it, and I do like these history stories because it also gives them a chance to rewrite their history a bit or recontextualize their history. So that's always fun to me. I always like that. But it also, the art makes you realize, damn, they had more anthropomorphic characters than black characters back then. Like that one Scott Koblish cover with all of the characters. I think Koblish did that with Marvel too at some points. But like you look at it, there's more dogs, there's more rabbit people, there's more like Mickey Mouse types because they were probably capturing that essence at the time. Then there are like, it's just amazing, man, that I could find. Like it's pretty wild. And maybe this means they can recontextualize that universe too, to maybe rewrite characters to be in that history when we didn't know during the Golden Age. maybe Sentry, a couple of black characters. But it does really make you realize what the world was like at that time when these books were at their inception and genesis.
I think it's a good point to demarcate and then reflect back on the fact that damn, we've grown since then. So I like it.
Oh, as soon as Static can be on a cover for issue 4 or whatever, they're putting him on there.
Sure.
I think this is great. Mark Waid is the person to get to do something like this. No one has a deeper understanding of DC than Mark Waid. And so getting him to kind of freshen up DC's past is a smart idea. My only problem with this is something that I go back to a lot when it comes to DC, which is just always recontextualizing their past in these sweeping ways. I feel like they get into trouble a lot when they do this because then they have to recontextualize the recontextualization. So we'll see how long this lasts and what the actual implications are for the stories that we are reading. But in a vacuum, the idea of this sounds great. Todd Knock is awesome. The work he did with Jeff Johns on the Golden Age stuff was really great. So I can't wait for this. Jerry Ordway's a legend. This will be. I think this will end up being really good.
Mark Waid already did this in Marvel. He did the history of Marvel Universe with Javier Rodriguez at the time. I loved that book. I thought it was great. It was really just quick snippets, but it also added a through line that then affects the present of the universe. So I'll be curious to see if he does that as well.
The initial cover here, the wraparound cover that they seem to be pushing, two notable omissions. They are going to appear seemingly in other covers, so it presumably will be in the book. But I'm curious as to why they led without a Batman and without Superman.
They're on the covers of some of the later stuff. Like the Scott Koblish one has Superman in it. It has the Action Comics car. It has Batman in it as well. I just think like they focused on there's like a Wonder Woman cover that I have in here somewhere. Yeah, where it's the Dan Mora one.
Yeah,
they're probably going to put the Trinity on each cover down the line. I can imagine maybe Silver Age being Superman and Batman being part of the Bronze, maybe. But they'll tackle it. You can't not. Dan Mora getting work though. Every new book DC has announced, there's a Dan Mora variant.
Oh yeah. Common Sense with the 199 says, which Golden Age do you prefer, Diana or Hippolyta?
Diana. I'm just familiar with that character.
Same. Yeah. Cale is probably maybe a better person to ask that, but for me, it's Diana.
Atomic Hound with the $5. It's the 40-year anniversary of Crisis on Infinite Earth and then history of the DC Universe. Perfect timing for this. I can imagine you're super excited, Hound. This is going to be cool.
Dan Mora Anti-Monitor variant.
Damn, Dan Mora any variant.
That's true. That guy just kills it.
Dan Mora, all the variants.
Kurt Wildshut, who's been going hard in the comments section since we had Adam on, leaving really good comments. I wish we could have tackled more of those earlier, but wanted to make sure to shout Kurt out. Kurt says, I'm not the audience for a History of X Universe book, but Mark Waid has already given his perspective on superheroes so many times, it's dull for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yes, in terms of he's done this multiple times, but he's been gone from DC for so long prior to World's Finest that what his modern take on this would be interesting. Sure, it could be just similar to Kingdom Come. Entirely possible. But I think Mark Waid has changed as a writer in some regards, and he's a lot more succinct and straightforward, and I'm curious to see how he handles this.
He's just an encyclopedia. Like he can contextualize these things with teams, with individual characters that I fully just trust. Like his vision of DC to me feels like it comes from one of excitement, and he wants to share that.
Julia Raul with the $2 says, I would buy this DC book. That's
Hell
awesome.
yeah.
June soon come, Julia. You will be able to buy it, and we will definitely be talking about it. It's 4 issues, too.
Nice.
Pretty short. Cole says Wade feels totally renewed at DC. That's my take. Mark Wade is like rejuvenated. He was in the Lazarus pit. He drank from the well of eternal youth, and my man is back in the saddle doing as good or better work than he's done in his career.
Wade is where DC is where Wade belongs, and I love Wade's stuff in Marvel. Captain America one underappreciated. The newer run with Somni. Daredevil is one of my favorites of all time. I have a tattoo of it, but DC is where he belongs. He just knows that world so well.
I'm hoping this is like a oversized, 80-page kind of thing. Maybe anthology, just like small snippets of stories, get individual characters here.
Silhouette says Cap. What's the Cap, Silhouette? What are you talking about? Mark Wade being rejuvenated? You tired of Mark Wade? I could see that. I know he's no Rom V. I know Rom V's your boy, but Mark Wade has juice. Joe says Mark Wade has took the Joshua Williamson spot in DC.
I don't know that he ever got to like be the guy. He was definitely a strong writer that they would put on titles when another writer was coming off, something like a PKJ, let's say for example. But I don't know that he was like the architect of this world.
You muted yourself, Ty.
That for clarity, it's a $5.99 book with 48 pages.
Okay.
So,
hey, it's good cost.
It's a bit bigger for less of a jump up in price than we're used to. So that's
Atomic calling me out. Marco hoping for a $14.99 cover price at 80 pages.
I mean, I definitely think Mark Wade was Josh Williamson was the guy.
Yeah,
definitely, no doubt about it. I mean, Dark Crisis was all him. That era just before Dark Crisis was all him, and I think that if it wasn't for Energon, because he chose to go and do that, Josh would still be in that pole position. Right now, he's the architect of Superman, but before Energon, he was the boy.
But that was his call, I believe. Like,
yeah, no,
so
was,
he made that
exactly.
call, and like he did a Crisis. Where else are you gonna go from there? You know what I mean? Like
that's true. Yeah,
creatively, I wouldn't. I don't. I totally understand why he made the choice.
Yeah. Grayson Red, Wade been going brazy. And then Kurt Wilder says, "Nice to be shouted out. I'm a recent sub, but I like your podcast. It's in the rotation alongside Ink Scribes and Off Panel now. Thank you so much. Appreciate it and welcome. Join the Discord if you're not. Cale likes to say the conversation doesn't end here. Continues in the Discord. There's so much stuff to just do there."
Thanks, Kurt. Appreciate you, dude. MP with the 9.99 says, "I'm curious how Wade will reconcile pre and post New 52. I hope preference is given to pre New 52. I think those stories are generally more enduring and impactful, i.e., Batman Year One versus 0 Year." That's going to be very interesting because I feel like we haven't really seen the New 52 contextualized as a part of the larger tapestry of DC in this way.
What is this going to be? One bad week they had, like, and then it was waved at the finger with Rebirth.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that. That's going to be cool.
But like, what's gonna carry over? Like, what the Year One stuff? Like in some of these places, he was younger. Batman was younger, for example. Okay, fine. Some of the stuff that happened with Joker, the Court of Owls, has kind of continued through. Like, what?
What lore wise carries over from New 52 that they've kept that wasn't stuff that was there pre 52? Is that what you're asking?
Or in this current future, in what we're in now, our present, what of the New 52 plus pre 52 hasn't already carried over?
I don't know if that's the point of this, though. I don't know if the point of the history of DC is to carry stuff over. I think it's to tell the history of DC in a short form, recontextualized fashion.
I was, I guess, specific to MP's question, like how to reconcile pre and post New 52 currently.
Because the question what he's saying is, which version of Batman's origin do you go with? Which year one do you go with? Do you go with the year one or 0 year? That's what he's talking about.
Okay,
Like, which is
What is
funny.
the history of Batman?
Yeah,
right,
which is
okay.
funny because they just released the final cover to that crossover we're getting with Justice League Unlimited by Wade that has Batman 0 year on the cover.
Really?
Yeah, it has the Terrifics on there. It has Flash year 1 on there. It's got Batman Beyond on there. It's got Superman Blue. It just seems like, oh, that's the clusterfuck issue where all these different universes combine or realities show up in our world. So
Huh.
that's gonna be interesting. Dan Mora cover as well. So
That's very interesting.
Oh.
I like that.
Buying.
Mike Elliott with a point I agree with wholeheartedly. Wade rules, so does Williamson. No idea why they get any hate. Yeah, like we don't even need to put people up against each other, right? Like who fucking cares? They're both tremendous creators.
and like Williamson's a cool dude. Every time we talk to him, he's been super chill. I would love to talk to Mark Wade. He's a little hard to get a hold of, especially with the internet and social media.
I don't think he is. I see Mark Wade on podcasts way smaller than ours.
Yeah.
But it's like you gotta know people who know him. But he knows a lot of people. That's the thing. So
yeah.
that is a talk about, Sean wanting Dan Didio on a show as like a white whale. Mark Wade's up there for me.
Kurt says, lest we forget, New 52 was great for Animal Man, Swamp Thing. It gave us some Justice League Dark, etc. There's some gems there. Dude, we did a whole New 52 deep dive in September of 2024. And so the New 52 is like always on my mind. And there were a lot of gems in the New 52, especially the first couple years. But there were a lot of stinkers too, man.
Man, he brings up the fact that we lost the Cliff Chang Olympian designs and went back to them being all fancy white people as criminal. I agree. Hermes was like a half bird man. What's the god of water? And whatever. He was a giant fish. Like that was cool back then. It was more like Percy Jackson appealing to me.
Neptune?
Yeah. Or the Greek equivalent of that.
Poseidon.
Poseidon, yes.
We got there. Let's go.
Yeah, we got there eventually.
Cole says Wade gets on a lot of podcasts. You guys could probably get him. Yeah, I'm sure if we reached out, we could get Mark Wade. We just haven't reached out to him yet, but we will. He seems like a good dude. All right. I think it's time for us to get out of here. We do have to shout out the rest of our patrons, of course, though, because you guys are incredible to us. We appreciate you so much. All your support means the absolute world. Steve Swarm Canaris, Panda v Panda, Ted Wong, Mad Max, the absolute overthinker, Blur, Jekyll Jose, Kobe the Crafter, Scripture, the Wardens of the Word, Hecatron, the Hate Machine, Amin, the Almighty Perez, Houston, the Century Kid, Murphy, Jasper the Gasper, Eddie, Peter, the Living Lightning, Electrics, Lucas Hallner, Young Dende, HUD, and joining us today was Hayden's Hideout. We are going to present at least one new edition next week to catch up. So thank you guys. Go ahead.
I'm gonna have Young Dendays ready to next week.
Cool.
Yo, what if Hayden's Hideout is like Danny the Street? He's just a fucking hideout.
Or like a house of a mystery or whatever. It just appears.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
With sentient
It's
place.
a sentient location.
Yeah.
Fiddler's Green.
What'd you call me?
Excuse me?
Flaming Jellybean said Snyder's Batman was my first entry into comics, so I will always love the New 52. Dude, yeah, the New 52 had some good shit.
Yeah.
I think Scott Snyder's Batman is an all-timer.
I think people give too much flack to New 52, especially that launch. I think people look at it from a macro perspective and what it did to DC Comics and how it upended a lot. They don't look at it at the micro. There was a lot of individually amazing books there, and there's a lot of good creators who cut their teeth there.
Yes, and I would also say that there are so many books that even at the time people didn't read. Like they just didn't even give a chance. When we did it, how many books did we each say like, "Oh, what about that one? Oh, what about that one?"
Fucking iVampire. Somebody brought it up in Discord recently. I forget who it was, but like iVampire was a great book. This was Joshua Hale Fialkov, but then
That's right.
who's the artist on it? He had the bit of a controversy last year with the Joker AI stuff. Sorrentino.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But that shit was
Right.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Madeline in the chat. Wonder Maddie, good to see you. How is where did you travel to again? Was it Sweden? Where how is it out there? Wherever
Sweden.
it is.
Yeah.
I forget. We had Wonder Maddie on the show on Pals Pulls a couple weeks ago. That was great. We got to have you back on at some point.
Let me know how the fish is there. I hear the Swedish fish is actually very good.
It might not have even been Sweden, honestly. I know she said where she was going, but I totally forgot. Atomic Hound shouts out Frankenstein, Agent of Shade.
Jeff Lemire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
underrated.
Yeah. Great book.
So
Yeah.
many good stuff, man.
She's in
Scotland.
Yeah. All right.
Scotland,
Haggis
okay.
then. Let me know what haggis is. Don't eat haggis. That looks vile. It's like sheep's stomach.
What time is it in Scotland?
It's
Probably like
Cale time.
yeah, that makes sense. Also, Maddie, I'll have you know that I am going to be starting playing the Guardians of the Galaxy game as per our agreement. So that means you got to jump into the Dark Tower. That's what we agreed to.
One of those sounds much more appealing than the other.
Which one?
Playing Guardians of the Galaxy. That game is great.
You ever read the Dark Tower?
No, I don't know how to read.
So there you go. I don't know how to read.
That's why I read comic books and I do the show and you guys tell me what they're actually talking about.
You know what though? And there's a credit to comics. I feel like there are a lot of comics you could read without reading
Oh yeah.
and know what's happening.
I know I've heard of people who've learned to read from comic books because of that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Second languages and stuff. Yeah.
100%. Grayson Red says at the end of the day, it presented new ideas and brought in money, which DC Comics was in desperate need of at the time. That's in reference to the New 52. Yeah, dude.
And they kept it going until it stopped working for them, which is understandable.
And by the way, one thing people neglect to point out when they talk about this is that prior to the New 52, DC sales were shit. They were in trouble. There were big conversations happening behind the scenes.
That's when we had Cry for Justice and Kongorilla was on. We've had this discussion.
Cry for dude. Oh my god.
I still think we should have a book club month where it's controversial books. And Cry for Justice
That's
can pop on
good.
there. Identity Crisis can be on there.
Onslaught.
Onslaught. We could throw Clone Saga. You can throw. It's a little more subjective and a little more obtuse. But what if we read what's that Frank Miller book? Holy Terror.
Holy Terror. Oh my god, dude. But it's like then where do you draw the line? Because we definitely cannot do a book club, nor am I interested in doing a book club based on anything Neil Douchebag did.
Oh yeah.
Like
I mean, it's not like we're going to be able to read Death by Neil Douchebag and in compact edition anymore. That thing got canceled.
Right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they
That's
removed
cooked.
it.
They're like,
Yeah.
but granted, bring them in.
There was somebody at the shop when I went to Now or Never in San Diego, and he mentioned, he's like, so what do you do with all these books? He's like, I was talking to one of the other shops, and they have a blacklisted section, so you can still buy it. It's still there. I still got the stock, but if you're buying it, know you're morally corrupt.
That's where Marco gets all of his copies of Cerebus.
I'm just picking it up. Dave Sim, give it to me.
You guys are hard to leave. Like, we've been doing this for 3 hours. We got other shit to do, but it's hard to leave.
We got Pal's previews to record. That's just a little, seeing how the sausage is made there. That's just when we record it. But
Behind the kimono, as it were.
yeah, I just wasn't sure if that was racially insensitive anymore.
It's definitely not sensitive, but
No
here we
racial,
are.
no racial.
There's a couple. You say no racial to get. Oh my god.
You haven't heard of that, dude?
No, I've heard the other one.
Oh well.
Oh, unreal. Kurt says it's definitely not viable for y'all, but a hidden gem / forgotten book club would appeal to me. Yeah, our Discord server, there are community book clubs that happen on our Discord server, which is, is one of the reasons why we always encourage you guys to join it. And there, it's easier to do things. It's community run. It's not run by us, but there, it's a lot easier for you guys to have conversations about books that we just can't. Like, I'll tell you the honest truth, right? Part of me, like, I love Jessica Jones. I love New Avengers. I love Ultimate Spider-Man. They're fucking phenomenal, right? But if you asked me, as Sean the podcaster, which one do I wish won? It's not Jessica Jones. Because I know that if it said Ultimate Spider-Man or New Avengers, that would lead to more viewership, right? But this works for us because, some of it is subsidized by the fact that our patrons are the ones that are choosing the books.
In previous to that, we would usually each come up with something, and then would be in a poll there. And the amount of times Marco would offer a Swamp Thing, like we're saving you guys with this,
Saving
for multiple Swamp Thing book club,
preventing the people from enlightenment.
Yeah. If we could do any book club, last thing, then we'll get the fuck out of here. If we could do a book club on anything, forgetting, how many people will watch it, what would you want to do it on?
because I've never done it, and I'm pretty sure you guys have. Watchmen.
You've never read it?
No, I've done theses on. I've written about it in school. I've never done a podcast on.
I see.
Yeah.
In waves, the last year, my book of the year. I just want to share that with you guys.
We've done a lot of the ones that I've wanted to do, but there is one that I really, really love, and it's called, oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of this book.
Criminal.
No.
Describe it.
Who is it?
Great. It's Gabriel Hardman and Karina Becco.
Invisible
myself.
Republic, or
Thank you.
yeah,
Invisible Republic. That book is so fucking good.
it's a good book. I have it signed.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So good. So good. And then the other one I want to do is Ex Machina, but we can't do that because it's way, way, way too long.
It's like 60 plus.
BKV.
50,
Yeah.
60. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
OG
Is it
stuff,
Tony
right?
Harris? Is that?
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's such a good book.
Starman is probably another one. Tony Harris and James Robinson. I'm a big James
I
Robinson
forgot
head.
about that.
Airboy by James Robinson. There was some controversy with that.
Oh.
With Greg Hinkle. Great book.
The one with Jay Bone that's going on right now. Welcome to the Maynard. It's 4 issues. I think you'd like it, Tyler. It's fantastical, super cute.
Nah.
All right. Well.
No,
all right. Yeah. All right. Hey, Sean. Yeah, do the thing.
Let's just hit a couple more comments and then we really will go. Hayden's Hideout said, I'd like to shout out Green Arrow for Pal's previews. I've been loving Condon's run so far. I gotta get on that. Electric says, one of my shops have a list in their shop of comic writers they don't support, but still have in stock, so have to sell. What the hell?
Ooh, I want that list. That's like it's like naming names during the Red Scare.
And then it's like the people you expect, like Neil Gaiman, fucking Warren Ellis, whoever. But then there's just like someone you don't even like. Steve Orlando's on. That's a bad example.
Oh yeah, so hold on.
I didn't mean, that's not what I was going for. Brian Bendis is on there.
Sure.
And you're like, what the fuck did he do? And it's just a personal issue.
It's just all bald men. Yeah. Tomacow knows game. He's saying Day Tripper.
Oh, okay.
Wait a second. Day Trip. What was Day Tripper?
That's the Beatles. The Beatles book. Is it not?
No. You're thinking of Fifth Beatle?
Am I?
I think so. Day Tripper is not. It's about a writer. Day Tripper. Yeah, it's Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba, the artists that did Umbrella Academy.
Oh, they did. They did. I think the Fifth Beatle.
No, they didn't do that. That was Robinson who did Fifth Beatle. You're just too musically inclined, Mark. Unless they did another Beatles book. Oh, they did Beetleborgs. It looks. No, I'm joking.
Cole shouts out Tokyo Ghost. Fucking love Tokyo Ghost.
We did that.
We did a book club.
Yeah, that's on there. You can find that.
Love that so much. Parker Luck. What's that? Matt Bird says, so is Marvel heading for bankruptcy? Number 2, regardless if Disney owns them, if they don't restore Peter and Mary Jane's marriage by now, in the
Your
616
favorite
main
topic, Sean.
universe. Matt Bird, that is my favorite comment. I love making fun of people who still are mad about Peter Parker and Mary Jane's marriage. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do it. Bro, Peter Parker is moving on. The only people who can't move on are the people who weren't with Mary Jane. I get it. Mary Jane is a model. She's beautiful. She is all of our ideal, right? But Peter moved on. In the comics right now, Peter got a new girl, bro.
She's got a new man. You should print out a picture of Paul. Just put a little tape right above your bed, so you look at Paul every night. That might desensitize you to this current situation of comics. That might be the solution.
Give him a little kiss on the forehead. Good night.
The public perception of Paul is the definition of a grower, in the sense that I promise that one day Paul will be a marquee character. It's not today, but I'm telling you, whether he's the all new Venom or whatever the fuck they're going to do, Paul is the breakout character of the 2020s. And if you disagree with that, argue with you.
If I'm a writer at Marvel, I'm doing it. And I think there
Yo.
are writers at Marvel who would do that out of spite.
Dude, if I ever had a shot at Marvel, I don't give a fuck what book it is. Somehow Paul is a supporting character.
If I ever have a shot at Marvel, I'm doing Superior Spider-Man again, but with Paul.
A day
I'm
in the
reading
life.
that.
Yep.
I'm reading that.
I'm mixing Superior Spider-Man, Paul, and Sin's Past into one big story.
Oh my god, dude. They would have assassins coming to your home. You better move, bro.
It's like that Birds of Prey issue.
Yeah. Whew. Oh my god, that's funny.
And then at
as
the end,
fuck.
I'm
All
cloning him.
All right, guys, we really do have to get out of here. Thank you so much for all the support today. You guys have been amazing. Make sure you support Adam Freeman, Prana DM, support his YouTube channel. Great stuff over there. We're always going to try to bring it to you honest and real, whether that's just us boys or any guests that we have coming on to discuss the industry that we all love so much. And we appreciate the fact that you guys are down for that. So we will see you Monday for Pals Previews at 1 p.m. Tuesday for the Alias Book Club. Thursday at 6 p.m. for Pals Pools. And then before you know it, it's Saturday again, and we're right back here live at 10:15 a.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next one. Until then, take care, guys.
See ya.